The dawn seeps in like a breath held too long, soft and tentative, brushing your eyelids before you even realize you've slept. You lie still for a moment, your limbs reluctant to remember that morning exists, that your body expects it, that you are expected to rise. You feel the weight of the blanket, not thick, never thick, but a handful of wool stitched with hope and patched where hope failed. It lies across your chest unevenly, more burden than comfort, its rough weave pressing into your ribs and whispering its own fretful complaints. Around you, the longhouse breathes in the slow rhythms of half-sleeping bodies. A sibling mutters in their dreams, words you won't understand even if you heard them. Their breath catches, soft and urgent, then drifts away again. Somewhere beyond the sagging wall, a neighbor coughs. A single, hollow sound, not strong enough to shatter silence but too weighty to ignore. And beneath your plank, a rat scratches, its claws scattering small declarations into the thin morning air. You feel the vibrations of its movement through the straw mattress, closer to the way you feel an old injury than a real presence. It reminds you you are not alone, not even in your half-dreaming. Your toes, curled under your blanket, feel the solid push of cold through the floorboards. The frost is still there, beneath eel-slick grass and mud, seeping up through time and wood and every small crack someone forgot to seal. You would shove your feet out, press them firmly into the chill, but inertia is the only thing keeping you still. Even the goat's warm presence at your side, its breath lulling step-soft against the wool, isn't enough to tug you into wakefulness. You are here, held in the fragile world between a heartbeat and a sigh. There is a sound above you, wood expanding with moisture, or maybe contracting, or maybe just settling into its own weary shape. It groans, settling into a creak that echoes the feeling in your chest. Spent, waiting, half collapsed. You cannot decide whether it is morning's first movement or night's final yawn. You remain motionless, listening. It feels like remembering, but without the courage to recall. Then, slowly, you breathe in, the air thick with the scent of damp straw, yesterday's sweat, and something ever-present but impossible to name. It is the smell of effort, of work left undone, of fear that life is too fine a thread. You exhale, and somewhere between breaths, your mind nudges you, reminding you that days continue whether you join them or not. Your shoulder aches. A splinter or strain or something old and unnamed pulses beneath the skin. Pain is quiet here. It doesn't shout. It lingers like a half-remembered song, persistent and familiar. You shift, and your back pops in a minor key. Small rebellion of the body demanding less use or more kindness. But there is no kindness here. Not yet. There is needing, responsibility, the slow gradation of fatigue across your bones. A whiff of dew drifts through a crack in the wall, carrying the faint taste of earth and grass and distant rain. You smell it before the light arrives, and it lodges in the back of your throat, compelling you to swallow. Morning is as much felt as seen. The blanket slides a fraction. You feel the movement in your chest, like someone turning the page of your ribs. You stiffen, and then relax. It is not so cold that the warmth vanishes. It simply withdraws like a neighbor who always arrives just barely late, never rude enough to stand before you, but always close enough to linger. You realize your stomach grumbles, a polite reminder that it is still present. You have not eaten since dusk, and though the memory of hunger has dulled, it's not gone. Gruel will be waiting soon. Thick barley boiled to blandness, cooked so long that whatever sweetness it held has suffocated itself. But still, warmth comes through bitterness, and sustenance arrives even in drabness. You might never be ready for it. You might never be rested. But necessity will not pause. It steps forward, even when you stand still. The goat shifts and nudges your arm. You feel the pressure, gentle, insistent. Not a complaint exactly, but a presence. I am here, warm like ember, wool and breath, life that doesn't stop. You inhale the familiarity of animal musk and hay, comforting in the rawness. It doesn't speak. It doesn't teach. It just breathes softly. You find yourself daring to press back, but you check. You remain where you are. The wooden door at the end of the hall groans when someone draws it closer to morning. It's not closed yet. It never is. Not in a place where neighbors pass inside just to see whether you woke yourself or are still half absent. You don't move toward it. You don't move away. You simply listen to the sound of half-conscious wood and half-remembered conversation. Always conversation. Always work. The world beyond this breath-heavy gloom begins again. A rodent darts somewhere beneath your blankets. You feel its light scuffle across the straw and press down a fraction. Stay calm, your body tells you. The day is already rising. It is circling the edges of your body like a cautious flame. Yet you are safe enough, not quite exposed. There is shelter here, in the quiet murmurs and scratchy mattress. It is not comfort. It is endurance. You remember briefly twilight, when shadows felt long enough to stretch between the poles of the roof and whisper things they'd seen. You remember that sense, but without the words to name it. It was fearless, constant, soft enough to cradle sorrow. You felt held, even by cold, even by darkness. Now twilight has retreated. Dawn is gentle in its persistence. It does not shout or demand. It allows you to stay. A board shifts again. The floor beneath the other twin's bed cracks. You sense someone turns over, sighs, perhaps shifts. Another sibling or cousin, sharing the cramped space. Or maybe the neighbor's guest, who stays until they remember there is work waiting elsewhere. There are more bodies than names here. Each breath shapes the place. Each sleeper sends sound into the quilt. You breathe in it. You breathe in them. Your breath shallows. You realize your chest is caught between sorrow and relief. The sorrow of knowing the blanket is thin, the walls thinner, your life dependent on each particle of straw holding together, and the relief that, for this single moment, you can still lie here beside the warmth of another living thing. You are nothing to this world, but you are something to this longhouse. You are needed, if only to lie here, to exist, to gather the last thin embers of night before they die. The goat nudges again, a reminder that bodies wake slowly, that life does not hurry. It sighs, shifts, asks for more space, without urgency, without demand. You remember you can choose to stay still. You remember sleep is not over until your body says it is. The smell of wood smoke climbs around you, lighter now, thread-like. There is a fire somewhere, coaxed back to life. Someone stoked the embers. Someone left water to warm for porridge. You don't know who, but you feel the warmth through the floor, just a shade above the chill, enough to whisper that there is purpose, that the day will come, that you will stand, and yet you remain, half dreaming, half waking, neither here nor gone. It is only morning after all, not bravery, not choice. Simply the weight of your body, the weight of the blanket, the weight of time itself. Your mind drifts again, far afield, through the whistling paths of grief and hope and exhaustion, the reek of the barn door at midnight, the dull ache in your knee when the rain started last spring, a memory of laughter you half believe happened, a fragment of a hymn you cannot place. The world is quiet. Your head lies heavy on the mattress. You are floating through something old and familiar, not anchored yet, but not lost either. You feel the blanket shift. The goat exhales. The floor moans. Another cough from the chamber beyond. The house is alive, softly alive in its flaws and fears and faults, like you. And you think, to remain here, in this small space between breath and movement, is as much survival as standing to work. You don't control it, but you can lie in it. The morning continues to press against your skin, not with heat, but with the promise of inevitability. You belong to the day in the same way you belong to the night, tethered to both, carried between them by this live body that aches and shivers and holds its breath. You haven't moved yet. You try not to, because this moment, this slow, empty, aching moment, is rare. Because once you rise, the straw will harden again. The blanket will become shelter again. The world will ask more than gentle listening. The rats will scurry for scraps. The goat will bleat for grain. The fires will need kindling. Hunger will become work. Cold will become need. But in this moment you hold, and you breathe. And you remember that morning can begin one exhalation at a time. The world is not ready for you. You are not ready for it. But here, together, neither of you need to be brave. Below you, something scrabbles once. A rat, or maybe wood settling. A sound that holds the memory of night. You inhale, deeper this time. You taste straw, wool, warmth, absence. You exhale, and for this once empty moment, you are still. And as the first thread of sunlight grazes the far wall, you feel it, the day waiting. So you stay, eligible to stand, but content to lie, capable of action, but chosen to rest. Because sometimes survival is quiet, sometimes endurance is stillness, sometimes mourning is enough. The flame has dimmed further, settling into cinnamon shadows dancing across your skin, and someone, maybe you, maybe the house, has shifted. Your muscles hum with yesterday's labor, each tendon tender to the slightest movement. But now the world tightens again around a new shape, the bucket. It sits beside you, empty, like a promise that sounds hollow when it's spoken. You know what it asks. You can feel it in the slight lean of your shoulder, as if your heart itself is waiting for water to arrive. You rise slowly. It's a movement carried out by necessity rather than intent, as if the body acts before the will. The floorboards groan in response, like ancient timber acknowledging yet another burden. You stay still enough to feel the echo run down your spine, to feel the echo run down the neighbor's wall, stirring cobwebs heavy with silent drips. The sibling on the other side of the room breathes in rhythm, one slow inhalation, one shallow exhalation, unaware perhaps that you're leaving them behind for this moment. The goat shuffles, responding to the shifting scent of water and wood mixed in your pores. It's an early suspicion, curiosity, neither kind nor unkind, just alive. Your fingers close around the bucket's rope handle. It's rough and fibrous, worn by countless hours of wet hands curling around it. It presses into your skin with a familiar sting, drawing damp lines of memory down your palms. You lift and feel the weight before it's filled, the hollow whisper of air trapped within. The world seems to hold its breath again, as though even the birds outside know this ritual is ancient, fundamental, and not to be rushed. You carry the bucket into the night's half-light, stepping across uneven boards into the longhouse doorway. Outside, frost lies layered on the ground in dimensional softness, flattened by night's persistence. You set the bucket down and it shifts, scratching the earth with its wooden base. It sounds like a question you're meant to answer. Do it, they say. So you begin. The well is close, just beyond the shared yard. But close is relative. Your foot lands in frost-damp grass, and the chill crawls into your wool sock, curls around your ankle. You ignore it, because it isn't the task. It isn't the weight. The water is the weight. History has shaped this bucket to demand your strength with every step. You remember the time the rope frayed in your grip, splashing you with cold surprise. No one spoke. But that whole moment hung in the air for days before you could hold the rope again. You repaired it then, with sinew and patience. Tonight, you pull the bucket toward the stone mouth of the well. The lip is slimed with moss, slick under your palms. You lean forward, listening to something stirring beneath the surface, feeling the damp wood sag beneath your weight. You drop the bucket until the rope coils in silence around the well, You wait. Only the wind answers, drifting across the open top with a sound like water breathing. You listen for the moment the bucket touches the liquid, deep and distant, like an echo in a well you can't see into. You feel the tug, and your arms stiffen, adjusting to the sudden added burden. You pull it up, not all at once. This is no hurried contest. The bucket rises gradually, the rope winding around your arms and shoulders. You feel each layer of cloth and sinew shift as the water's weight comes forward to rest in the bottom. The bucket rises slower than your breath, and the water drips off the sides like tears, seeking somewhere to go. You don't see them, but you feel them land along your collarbone, your chest. You taste them on your tongue even before you press your lips to the rim. At the top, you stop, not in triumph, but in reverence, because this bucket is full of something that never stops asking for more. The water sits there, inert and cold, but it changes everything by being held. You shift your fingers around the handle until your wrists burn with that familiar ache, the ache that announces you've carried life again. The return is slower. Each step is measured against the memory of emptiness. Each footfall weighs the water in your hands. Your arms pulse with strain. The world tilts a fraction under that weight. But you carry it. You carry it because you must. When you cross the threshold back into the barnhouse interior, the body shifts again, greets you like an old friend testing your endurance. The bucket's touch pulls the floorboards downward with it. You place it carefully beside the fire pit, if only to ensure your hands don't lose their tether to warmth amid that cold water. There are other buckets already hung near the hearth, and they stare at you silently, judging or encouraging, you cannot tell. You lift the bucket again and pour. The water splashes into a clay trough. Steam coils upward in a soft ribbon, and the entire cabin smells like potential. Food, warmth, cleansing. Your muscles tremble, tiny smooth shudders like a flute with no wind. You welcome them. They anchor you to the living world. You stretch your shoulders, rotating the bucket until most of the water spills away. A few drops remain, heavy and determined. You swish them out into a bowl for washing, or perhaps just for the cat that prefers to drink from your dishes. You're not sure yet. You set the bucket down. It lands with a hollow thunk, more solemn than clatter. You feel the revolution in your bones, cold transformed into steam, hard work transformed into warmth, an offering given and accepted by the world. Around you, the house breathes again. The fire finally catches fully, wood splintering, coals falling. You sense the siblings stirring, shifting to face dawn, and the goat moving nearer, sniffing at the bucket you carried. The rat sleeps on. The neighbor's cough has retreated into reception, taken cover. Life is stirring in minor chords. Your body still aches. Your veins pulse with cold strength. You've carried a literal part of life across dirt and wood and timbered floors, up and down uneven surfaces. No notes, no reflection, just breath and muscle. Once again, you have done something that matters. You stand still for a moment. The bucket is empty again, but it is full too, with worn weight and hard-earned future. No words describe that feeling. It's just you and the moment, warmed by coals, touched by cold, and humming with continued survival. You slide your sleeve along your arm, shifting the wool. You inhale again. The day stretches before you. There are more days, more burdens stacked in memory and muscle. But for now, there is only this one moment. The slight tremor in your arms from all you've carried, the soft hiss of steam, the goat's breath at your feet, and the house steadying itself around your return. A small sigh escapes you, though sighs mean little here. But this is enough. You are enough. This one burden carried becomes a faint promise that you can carry again, that tomorrow you can do this again, that perhaps the world notices, but does not applaud. That is enough too. And in that hush, before returning to straw or chores, you feel something settle deep in your chest, a cup filling with something quieter than silence, something solid as water itself. You pause. You listen to the drip of clearing wood, the low breath of the goat curled in straw, the rat stirring beneath the floor once more, the faint echo of the neighbor coughing far away. You inhale the stale, sweet air of early morning. You exhale all the fatigue that followed the bucket home. Later, you will shave your arms and face if there's water left. You might wash your feet. You might hand off the bucket and pretend it was never heavy. You might laugh dryly when someone grumbles about carrying it for you next time. But right now, as the day has begun for true, you are still resting inside the moment of accomplishment and exhaustion that follows labor. And that is enough. Enough to keep breathing. Enough to close your eyes again. Enough to simply be, steady, live, feel, not ready for what comes next, but brave against it, arm by arm, step by step. The embers you coaxed yesterday lie like obdurate passengers, reluctant to move. You enter the space between two breaths of the fire pit, the moment when darkness and warmth both hesitate, held in balance against your lungs. You sweep ash aside with the back of your hand, though you feel its heat in your fingertips, gentle and final, as if the wood beneath is still breathing of the hours past. The coals glow in sleepy tones of orange and ash, seeking permission to live again. They are not alive yet, not in the way you need them to be, but they are not dead. That space matters. The blanket you brought in from the sleeping pile flutters into your arms as you kneel. Wool catches the warmth differently here in this alcove of slow light. It consoles your knees, rough and cracked, and the smell of wool and sweat mixes with the perfume of peat. The air tastes of damp stone and old timber houses that stretch their ribs against the cold as if coughing. You breathe it in, deeper than you wanted, willing the day to come softly this time. Your hands rummage for kindling, slivers of wood stripped of bark, twigs so small you resist breaking them. You press them together, gathering warmth from each touch between fingers. The kindling is brittle, but you treat it gently, no snapping too soon. The sibling from the other bed stirs, shifting under the straw. The rustle draws closer to you, but they stay. Their presence settles like witness. Two people cannot beg fire alone. A twig shifts in your grip, and the tip crumbles softly. Dust drifts into the coals like earth rejoining earth. You speak no words, but your gesture is invitation. Silence crowds the moment. The neighbor's cough presses through the walls, a brief reminder that illness hovers still in case warmth falters. The rat scratches again beneath, maybe searching for crumbs, maybe for warmth too. You cannot be sure. You lean forward. For a moment you consider blowing, but blowing drags ash into the embers and kills their heat. You pause in that wait between hope and action. The tiniest tremor runs through your arms. You sit still, letting warmth press upward through your wool. The world waits with you. Then a hiss, a small flame cracking free. You hold your breath. The kindling catches, and you shelter it with your hands, cupping the fragile glow like treasure. It flickers against the night-cold, dull shapes, and you hold it steady. The process is tender. You inhale the scent of new flame, pine resin, smoked wood, ancient promise. A memory stirs, maybe of your mother, or maybe of no one at all, but of something lost to memory, reclaimed in smell and light. The flame climbs, petals opening against the base of your hand. The kindling curls color into itself before blackening, and you let go, allowing the fire to breathe on its own. You retreat, but not far. The warmth pools at your shoulders like gentle arms. You sit, just enough to feel. Fires are not kind. They do not forgive. But they know you depend on them. The sibling coughs once. It is a gentle interruption, reminding you that this fire is more than solace. It is barricade. Against cold, yes. against dread more, against nights that grow too long and bodies that run thin enough to vanish like breath. You settle yourself closer, but not touching. You understand your place here in the soft glow. You are the petitioner. The fire is the authority. Your eyes travel across the smudge of flame, past the logs that hold it upright, to the walls that hold the sky at bay. You feel the char of soot under your fingernails, tiny black moons left behind from letting your hands rest too near. You rub them on your tunic, leaving a mark, an offering, a theft, because fire takes what it chooses. You think of yesterday, when hunger stretched you taut between sunrise and this moment. The fire offers promise, tea, stew, warmth to soothe a half-healed ache. You imagine the spoon, the steam like tiny spirits spiraling toward the ceiling. But those are luxuries promised tomorrow. Today you simply feed the flame. You add another twig, then another chunk of half-dry wood. Each one plummets into the glow, hissing protest, releasing its smell. Cedar, oak, ash, all folded into a single tide of smoke. The goat lurches awake, nudging nearer still. Its breath curls around the coals. You imagine it judging the fire, wondering how you have coaxed warmth from cold. You do not offend. You add one more twig, step away, and let it roar into life. It demands nothing more and gives nothing more than heat. Yet you find comfort in its laconic generosity. This glow anchors the house, like a heartbeat lodged at its center. Empty chairs seem to lean toward it. Empty mugs rest in waiting. The world outside crouches under frost, but here there is resilience. Not hope, not yet, but resilience. You stay with it a while, not sleeping, but breathing in concessions of warmth, breathing out the ache of cold mornings and long nights. When the logs crack, you pause. The sound is not sharp. It is the fire speaking, holding conversation with itself. Not for you, but around you, including you without waiting for thanks. The smoke curls up and finds the ceiling, another dance piece, slow and patient. The air is spicy with soot and wood, perfumed by effort. You taste nostalgia in its way. Nostalgia for a shelter that doesn't always burn, for a hearth that demands everything while giving only warmth in return. Behind you, the house stirs. Another breath, deeper, patches in the darkness. The house is alive too, stretching your world into it, holding you gently between stone and planks. You inhale that presence, and it steadies you. You think, not with words, but with half-lost sounds inside your bones, that this is endurance, not triumph, not sweet, just survival, made possible by this pleading touch of flame. Your shoulders loosen. The scar across your forearm twinges, but you ignore it. You brush ashes from the wood, coaxing the flame's appetite toward bluer heat. It leans into you. You lean into it. Time slips through the haze of smoke and heat, and the world's edges soften. The rat beneath the floorboards calms. The goat exhales, satisfied. The sibling breathes once more, deeper now, closer to rest than sleep. The neighbor coughs again, but not as a threat. Just a reminder you share this life with breath and bone and the quiet settlement of stone against sky. You think again of what comes next. Food, work, weariness. The day does not wait. It props itself against the threshold, patient. But here, while the fire holds, you do not lean. You simply stay. You observe. You live. A memory drifts. The moment you first learned to light a tinder. The moment your hand trembled with excitement. The moment the first spark died, and you wondered how many attempts you'd have to buy before it stayed bright. You think of all the fires that died in your care. You realize they were not failures, but lessons. Coal is patience. Flame is reward. Ash is reminder. The burn of memory should not hurt. It teaches. You inhale one long, slow breath, letting soot touch your lungs. You hold it in and exhale as slowly. The cough careful, careful. A gentle cough that tells you, You are still here. For now, you are still here. You rise again, slowly, feeling the coffee-colored warmth slide down your back. If you stretch, your muscles will protest, but you only shift. You step back from the hearth, not out of fear, but reverence. You glance at the fire once more, looking not at the flame, but through it, into the dusk that frightens you with its distance, the dawn that promises another ache, the world that waits beyond these logs. Yet for this moment, this exact span of breath, you are content to be the quiet petitioner before flame. You are content to hold the space between dark and light, between cold and warmth, between survival and forgetting. You are steadfast, not for hope, not for glory, just for the simple privilege of warmth. The fire crackles again, louder this time, or maybe it is just you noticing. You listen. You remember that movement beyond fire pits and embers will come. You hear the first drop of water hitting the roof. Soft, insistent. Rain will come again. The well will need tending again. You will need to carry buckets and coax coals and feed the fire once more. You step back another inch and feel the blanket behind you, a suggestion of pillows waiting on the bed. You don't think of returning, but you feel that stillness can hold as long as necessity sleeps. Tonight, for now, you stay. One last log shifts. A small shower of sparks flutters, each a glowing wish that something softens inside you. You breathe again, thankful for smoke and soot and coals that do not scold. You acknowledge the fire has not forgotten you. You close your eyes for a moment and let the warmth hug your temples. And then, nothing else is asked. Nothing else is given. Just the steady hush of coals and the gentle breathing of those around you. You exhale. You listen. You remain. You're still holding the warmth from the fire you coaxed into existence, or at least trying to. It clings faintly to your palms, like a dream you don't want to lose, but it slips away the moment you move. Cold returns to your spine, with the confidence of something that knows it always wins. The kind of cold that doesn't bite so much as it lingers, like someone staring at you from across a room and refusing to blink. You shift on the bench that isn't truly a bench, just a warped plank on stones, and your bones creak louder than the wood. A muffled cough from the far end of the room reminds you that someone else is stirring, or perhaps never slept at all. A shuffle of hay. The faint slosh of a chamber pot, not quite steady in someone's hands. Somewhere, a child snuffles into a sleeve, not crying, just existing. And the goat, of course the goat, is already awake. You can hear her hoof scraping against something wooden, impatient and entirely unimpressed by the hour. The light outside is a suggestion at best, not sunrise, just less dark. You squint at it, then at the thin wisp of smoke rising from the pot suspended over the fire, or near it. It isn't really hot enough to boil, but the illusion of effort is comforting. Breakfast, such as it is, began its journey to being unappetizing sometime in the night. A slurry of oats and water, or something oat-adjacent, left to soften in its own boredom. It smells like damp bark and regret, which means it's probably ready. You drag yourself over, not out of hunger, but obligation. Your stomach is quiet. That's not a compliment. It's learned not to ask for things. The spoon is carved from something that once had branches. It bends slightly when you stir. A skin has formed across the top of the gruel, thicker than the rest, but not in a rewarding way. It tears like old paper as you fold it under. You think, not for the first time, that if breakfast had a color, it would be this, something between gray and indecision. Someone behind you exhales with meaning. You pretend not to hear. Meals in this house are not shared so much as tolerated in proximity. The bowl is a communal one. There is no dignity in it. You dip your spoon in anyway. The first mouthful is lukewarm. Too thin, a little gritty, as though the oats were hesitant to be oats in the first place. There's something hard in the bottom, a pebble maybe, or a promise broken by someone else's teeth. You chew around it carefully, as if the act of trying makes the meal noble. It doesn't. Someone else takes a turn. There's no eye contact, just movement. The scrape of spoon on wood. The sound of swallowing that feels louder than it ought to. The rhythm of consumption without joy. You let your mind drift because there's no flavor to anchor it, just texture. And even that is inconsistent. Like life, really. Sometimes thicker, sometimes less. Always bland, always there. A child hiccups and is shushed. You glance over but don't say anything. There are no real conversations in the morning. Only sounds. Footsteps. Coughs. The occasional curse when someone steps in something they didn't see in the dark. You wrap your fingers tighter around the bowl, not for warmth, but because letting go feels like admitting this is the best part of the day. You're not quite ready for that. Behind you, someone is trying to clean a pot with hay. It sounds as effective as it is, scratchy, resigned. The fire snaps once, and you look up as though it's something worth acknowledging. A single spark floats up and dies before making it anywhere useful. The goat bleats. It is not a request, more of a statement. She wants to be milked, or fed, or simply obeyed. She rules from her corner with the confidence of something that has never questioned its worth. You envy her for that. Someone drops a spoon. It hits the ground with a wet sound, which means it landed in something. There's a pause, then a sigh. No one rushes to clean it. That would be an overreaction. The last few mouthfuls go down slower. You think you're full, but the truth is, you're simply done. Fullness implies satisfaction. You stand, knees cracking like the firewood didn't. Someone else moves into your space without speaking, without even looking. The bowl passes hands like a burden. There is still a chill in the air, though it has changed shape. Less biting, more clinging, like wet wool or obligation. You stretch your arms above your head and feel a draft slide down your tunic like a whispered complaint. Your body is heavy in the places that worked yesterday and numb in the places that rested. A sparrow lands outside on the ledge and pecks at something invisible. It tilts its head, decides nothing is worth staying for, and leaves again. You relate. Breakfast is over in the way that things end without ceremony. Just a fading of movement, a stillness. The bowl sits there, half wiped by someone's sleeve, waiting to be forgotten. You step away from it and into the next moment, which smells faintly of hay and things that need to be carried. You begin the day not nourished, but reminded that you are still here, that the next thing waits. And somewhere beyond the door, the sun has made a decision to rise, despite everything. And then, once the last spoonful of thin gruel has settled like regret in your belly, the day comes to claim you properly, with sleeves, with seams, with something roughly the shape of decency. But first, it comes with wool. And the wool does not ask permission. It waits for you beside the fire pit like a lurking obligation. Damp in patches, always slightly twisted at the hem, it stares without eyes and makes demands without words. You pull it toward you with the kind of reverence one reserves for ritual suffering, the way someone might greet the stocks or the neighbor who chews loudly through morning prayers. It is your tunic. It is yours. It is still damp in the shoulders, and heavier than it was yesterday, and absolutely no softer. It clings as you pull it over your head, the collar reluctant, the sleeves argumentative, the wool itself somehow sticking to your soul. You wrestle your arms into it like stuffing meat into two small casings. It fights back. It always fights back. And just when you think you've won, it scratches, not in a bold, aggressive way. Number its scratches in subtle, insidious movements, like betrayal with a slow smile. Somewhere down your left side, under the arm, there's a patch of fabric stiffer than the rest. You suspect it's from a week-old stew splash that has since calcified into a new textile altogether. You do not investigate further. Some mysteries are not meant for daylight. You shift your shoulders. The seam under one arm pinches. You shift again. Now the collar chokes. You try not to breathe too deeply, lest the damp wool close around your ribs like a slow vice. There's an oath forming in your mind, one you whisper every morning as the tunic settles against your skin. You will not scratch. You will endure. You are stronger than the wool. But then the itch begins. A creeping, crawling thing. Not in the spot you expect. Never in the spot you expect. First, the back of your neck. Then the inside of your elbow. Then, somehow, your shin, even though the tunic ends far above it. It's psychological now. The wool knows. And it plays with you. Your skin prickles. Your hair stands on end beneath the fabric. There's a sudden urgency, a need to claw, to scrape, to shuck the whole thing off and run shrieking into the woods where you might live out the rest of your life shirtless among the moss. But you do not run. You do not shriek. You are civilized after all. You are medieval, not wild. You scratch. Just a little. One quick pass of the knuckles across the side of your ribs. Casual, as if you weren't thinking about it. As if you weren't counting the seconds until you could scratch again. The wool presses close. It knows you've lost. You cinch a rope around your waist to hold the tunic in place. Not because it needs help staying on, but because modesty, in these parts, is a communal obligation. Your belt is a twist of flax, slightly frayed, still carrying the faint tang of something vaguely barnyard. You breathe through your mouth and tie it tight. At your side, your sibling groans through a yawn and reaches for their own garment. Their tunic, marginally shorter, marginally filthier, is slung across a wooden stool, stiff as a frost-bitten flag. You watch them pull it on, fighting the same war in silence, both of you too proud to admit how often the wool wins. Behind you, someone clears their throat, a long, slow wind-up of a sound, followed by the unmistakable cadence of a goat chewing something it shouldn't. The goat is always here during dressing, not out of affection, but curiosity, or possibly judgment. You don't make eye contact. The tunic settles against your body like a second skin you didn't ask for and cannot shed. You feel it with every breath. It moves when you do, reluctantly, like a barn door in damp wind. And there's that one shoulder seam again, tugging in a way that makes you wonder whether your arms have become lopsided or if the tunic is simply developing sentience. Somewhere under the hem, a dried stalk of straw stabs gently at your thigh. You reach down to pull it free, only to find two more. They've migrated from bedding to clothing, becoming part of the ecosystem. You name them, mentally, as one names persistent ailments or creaky floorboards. And still, you itch. The morning proceeds around you in muffled clatter and muttered complaints. A footstep on old boards, a spoon clinking against a wooden bowl. Someone sighs the way only the perpetually damp can. You stretch your arms, roll your neck, and attempt once more to make peace with the fabric that binds you. There is no peace, only acceptance or madness. You haven't decided which you prefer. You layer a cloak over the tunic, another battle, another burden, and the sensation changes. It doesn't improve. It just becomes differently awful. The scratch of wool is now joined by the slap of coarse linen against your legs, the weight of rough thread pulling across your shoulders. Like someone has stacked minor inconveniences on top of deeper ones and called it getting dressed. But you know this routine. You know how to bend without pinching your side, how to breathe shallowly when the collar cuts across your throat, how to tug your sleeves just so to keep them from falling into your porridge. You know how to live like this. It's the knowing that hurts the most. Outside, the frost has begun to lift, or at least thin into something that looks like air. You open the door and are greeted by a breeze that slides into your sleeves like a thief. The fabric clings to your arms, desperate for warmth it will never provide. You step into the world looking very much like someone who got dressed by losing a bet. Your feet crunch across the packed dirt. Your arms swing stiffly. Each movement, each twist of fabric against skin, is a reminder. You are here. You are wearing this. You are enduring. You have made your oath to the itchy tunic, and the tunic has accepted your suffering with indifference. At the water barrel, you dip a cup and splash your face, hoping the shock will distract you. It doesn't. The wool drinks some of the water too, and now your sleeves are heavy and cold. You shake your arms, flicking droplets into the air like a wet dog that forgot its dignity. The goat watches from the doorway. You think it's judging your technique. Hours pass. The sun climbs. The tunic dries in some places and remains inexplicably damp in others. Your skin adapts. Or maybe it just gives up. The itch fades. Not because it has stopped, but because you have stopped noticing. It has folded itself into your awareness, become part of the background noise of being alive. And somewhere, deep beneath the wool and the skin and the breath you barely notice you're holding, the oath remains. A quiet promise, a shared misery. You wear this, you bear this. You are medieval, and the tunic, this coarse, lumpy, sanctified irritation, is your second skin. You sit on a stump near the fire pit, the edge of your tunic catching on the bark. You do not adjust it. You do not need to. The tunic and the stump and the dirt underfoot are all speaking the same language now, a dialect of discomfort, a grammar of grainy seams. The breeze shifts. A sound, soft and low, drifts from the rafters of the longhouse behind you. A snore, or a mutter, or a dream left half open. You lean forward, elbows on knees, hands limp in your lap. The wool shifts with you. It knows your shape now. And as the sun warms your shoulders, and the goats shuffle in their pen, and the sky turns its slow gray wheel, you think, not for the first time, that you would give almost anything for linen. But not today. Today, you wear the tunic, and it wears you too. A crow calls in the distance, gravelly and amused. Your tunic creaks as you stand, a final tug at the waist, a deep, resigned breath, and onward you go, into the chores, the chill, the endless woolen hours to come. The morning never really ends. It just stretches, damp and aching, into everything else. Breakfast has done little. A ladle of hot nothing with the texture of chewed oats and disappointment. You remember eating it. You remember the slight burn on your tongue. But mostly, you remember that you are still cold, and that being full is something that happens to other people in stories. The fire is barely more than a stubborn glow now, having coughed its last spark sometime between the groaning of the rooster and the far-off bell from the priory. The smell of singed wood clings to your tunic. Smoke has soaked into everything, into your sleeves, your hair, the roof beams. You can taste it when you yawn. Even your breath feels gray. There's no ceremony about beginning the day's labor. You don't march to it. You don't sigh and say, "Well then, let's begin." You simply do, because there is no other direction. Work is the rhythm beneath the world, the slow grinding wheel that turns whether you're ready or not. You can't stop it. You only climb onto it, like moss on a millstone. The first task is always something to do with mud, or dung, or both. And the path outside the longhouse has a unique genius for turning both into one indistinguishable thing. The weight of your shoes increases by half with each step, a creeping armor of sludge that the earth insists you wear. There's a dull pain in your lower back. It's the same one that always visits when you bend to lift the buckets from the trough. One in each hand, wooden, leaky. carved by someone long dead and badly missed, if only for their superior joinery. They creak when you lift them. Your arms creak too. The well is not far, but it always feels far enough. Far enough to consider turning back. Far enough that you wish someone else had drawn the short straw this morning. But your feet know the way, and the slope has already begun. You walk through the hush of thatched rooftops and crooked fences, past the village dog who doesn't bother to bark at you anymore. Even he seems bored with your existence. At the well, there's a line. Of course there's a line. Not spoken, not orderly, just a mutual understanding of who came first and who is probably lying. You nod to the widow with the twitchy eye. She does not nod back. She never does. The bucket rope groans overhead, and you wait in silence with the others, shifting your weight from foot to foot, the cold settling in your knees like an old regret. Eventually, it is your turn. You lower the bucket, watching it vanish into the stone ring's black throat. The splash comes late. It's always later than you expect, as though the water isn't eager to be found. When you haul it back, your arms burn, not in the way that feels noble or earned, but in the way that feels endless. The water sloshes, some of it escaping down your wrist and into the sleeve of your tunic. It finds your elbow quickly. You don't react. There is no point. You trudge back, wet and heavier than before. The buckets leak on the way, so that by the time you reach the cottage, you've watered most of the footpath and nourished a particularly enthusiastic patch of nettles by the door. You deposit them by the hearth, where they'll be used for cooking or cleaning or baptizing something unfortunate. You are not told. You are not thanked. Next is firewood. Always firewood. The stack beside the wall is dwindling again, in that way it always does, mysteriously and resentfully. Chopping it is someone else's task, but carrying it is yours today. The pieces are awkward, splintered, resentful of your embrace. You cradle them against your chest like a burden you volunteered for and instantly regretted. The goat watches you. She knows something. She always does. She blinks, chews thoughtfully, and turns away. You envy her, briefly, but then remember she sleeps standing up and has lice. You adjust your grip on the firewood and carry it inside. You can feel a splinter somewhere in your armpit. You decide not to look. There are other tasks. Of course there are. Cleaning the ashes from the hearth. Rinsing something that smells like regret. Holding a ladder that feels like it was made from rotted bones while someone climbs it to adjust thatch. Every moment asks something of you. Every breath costs a coin you do not have. The world here is built to take from you slowly, like a field drawing blood from a blistered foot. You give yourself to it one small wound at a time. There's a rhythm to it, tedious, familiar, exhausting. A rhythm that demands you never stop moving, because if you stop, someone will notice, and they'll find something worse for you to do. Your hands are never truly clean, even after scrubbing them in cold water until your knuckles sting and your nails pale. Dirt lives in the folds of your fingerprints. The smell of turnips clings to your palm from when you fed the pigs. Smoke lingers in your skin. You have become a map of tasks. Every inch of you remembers something unpleasant. And still, the day is far from over. At some point, you eat again. It is something beige, something warm, something spooned from a shared pot while your legs still ache and your jaw doesn't want to chew. You don't remember the taste, only that it filled a space for a while. More chores come, stitching a tear in your sleeve with a borrowed needle that bends like it's afraid of commitment. Filling the gaps in the wall with straw and mud, knowing full well the wind will undo it by next moon. Chasing a chicken that seems to understand your soul and mock it. You don't win. You never win. Afternoon light filters through the door in a way that almost feels kind, but you don't trust it. Light here is always leaving. It's always on its way somewhere else. You pause once by the edge of the field, pretending to admire the clouds. In truth, you are letting your shoulders drop, if only for a blink. You roll your neck. You breathe out. But then someone calls your name, or maybe not your name, just a name that could be yours. And you move again, because stillness is suspicious. Evening creeps in like a draft. The air thickens, not with warmth, but with the promise of more to come. You carry things inside, close shutters, help sweep the same patch of floor that will be muddy again by morning. You bank the fire like a nervous parent tucking in a child with a fever. You try to believe it will last the night. And when the final task is done, when you are no longer needed, but still not free, you sit by the hearth and pretend you are comfortable. Your tunic scratches. Your joints hum. Your eyes burn. But you keep them open. Because closing them means dreaming, and dreaming means remembering, and remembering hurts. Eventually, you lie down. The straw is still too sharp. The blanket still smells like everyone who has ever used it. But your limbs are too tired to complain. Your breath slows. The ache in your back becomes the ache in your ribs, becomes the ache in your thoughts. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes. Somewhere in the corner, the goat sighs. Somewhere beyond the door, the wind changes direction. Somewhere behind your eyelids, the list of tomorrow's chores begins to write itself. And you, shaped by labor, cradled by exhaustion, drift, not into peace, but into pause. A faint rustle, a distant snore, a small, sharp itch beneath your collar that you do not scratch. Then stillness, again, and something waiting in the dark. The scrape of a wooden handle against the rough wall signals the start of something. Not a task, exactly, but a rhythm you've fallen into without ever truly learning. The tool is familiar by feel, not by name. Your fingers close around it automatically, like greeting a quiet companion who has never asked anything of you except to be held. The wood is smooth in the middle and splintered at the edges, worn down by hands much older and more calloused than yours. You know it's heavier on one side, so you adjust your grip before lifting. The blade end, if it can still be called a blade, is rusted and blunted, its shape dulled from years of meeting earth and stone and the occasional misplaced boot. But it cuts, or at least bruises the soil into submission, and that's enough. You don't call it anything. There's no need. You don't say spade or hoe or adze. You simply reach for it, and your body understands. The heft, the drag, the balance that threatens your wrist just before it steadies. It's a kind of knowledge that lives in the joints, not the tongue. A memory not inherited, but embedded. Outside, the wind is awake again. It fusses with the thatch above your head and rattles something loose near the coop. You ignore it. The wind is not your problem unless it breaks something you must fix. Your steps take you where they always take you, to the edge of something that looks like a garden, but behaves more like a graveyard. The earth is cold and defiant. It doesn't split easily, not for fingers or for iron. You jab the tool into it anyway, not because you expect success, but because the motion itself is part of the day. A gesture of endurance, the gesture of someone who still hopes a turnip might someday thank them. A sibling's voice mutters in the distance, words or snores, it's unclear. You feel their presence like you feel the rat under the floorboards, always near, always twitching through the periphery. It's easier that way, to not name things, people, tools, problems. You endure them all by keeping them vague. There's a different tool you'll need soon, the one for chopping. Its head wobbles slightly, loose in its binding. The shaft is too long and the handle too dry, but your hand knows exactly how far down to grip, so the weight doesn't twist your wrist. That spot is darker than the rest of the handle, smoothed to a satin finish by years of quiet calculation. You've bled from this one more than the others. It's always been honest about its dangers. You remember when someone tried to sharpen it once. They used a whetstone, or maybe just another rock. You watched, half interested, until the blade slipped and opened their thumb. The memory doesn't sting, but your own fingers twitch at the thought. That's how tools teach, by taking something small in return. There's a hook, too. Curved iron like a question mark, always colder than the others. It lives by the door, where it waits for you to need it. For what? You never quite know until you do. Hauling a carcass, lifting a pot, pulling something from where it doesn't belong. It's not elegant, but it listens. When you hold it, it holds back. The nail puller, if that's what it is, makes a different sound when it hits the ground. A ring, like a bell in a hurry. You hate that sound. It means someone's made a mess. It means there will be bending, swearing, and sometimes splinters. Still, you know its balance, the way it digs when you twist just right. Like everything else, it has secrets you've earned the hard way. The smallest tools are the worst. The awl, the pick, the needle bent from something else long ago. These ones disappear. You find them when you're barefoot, or when you kneel too fast and feel them push back through the straw. You never remember where you put them. They remember you. Once, you tried to count how many tools there were in the shed, but the line between tool and piece of scrap blurred too quickly. A stone can be a hammer. A stick can be a lever. Your foot has been used to wedge more things than your hands ever will. In the end, anything that helps becomes part of the ritual. You carry them not in a basket, but in your posture, in the way your spine curves when lifting, the way your elbow tucks in when prying, the way your knuckles swell with time and memory. The neighbor coughs again. You don't see them, but you know they're there. You think their axe handle is shorter. You've watched them swing, compact and efficient, while you drag your longer tool like a burden meant for someone larger. It's not envy, exactly, just awareness. You all carry something wrong-sized, ill-fitted. That's the rule. Later, when the work quiets for a moment, you'll reach for the rope, the one that's more knot than line now. It creaks when you lift it, smells of mold and something unidentifiable, maybe the past. You don't untangle it. You just find the loop that still works and use that. That loop, like everything else, knows its place. Your muscles ache less than they used to, not because they've strengthened, but because they've forgotten the alternative. The soreness has folded itself into your skin like heat that never quite leaves after a fever. You move through it, not against it. The sun shifts behind the trees, and your shadow stretches toward the shed. The tools hang like sleeping bats, heavy and inert, waiting for another hand, another day. Some of them will outlast you. Some already have. You feel the weight of one more tool in your palm. Its name escapes you, if it ever had one. But its curve fits your grip, and your shoulder falls into its rhythm. That is enough. The task will not end. The job will not be finished. But the tool understands, and you, by now, understand the tool. Your hand lets go, fingers cramped and stiff. The handle stays warm for a moment after. You watch the dust settle around your boots and think about nothing in particular. The tool is on the ground again. It doesn't ask to be cleaned. It doesn't ask for praise. It simply waits to be used once more. From inside the house, someone shifts, and a floorboard sighs. The goat huffs from its pen. A rope creaks. A cough rises behind a wall of straw and faded wood. The air tastes like rust and old smoke. And somewhere behind it all, something small falls, metal on dirt. You don't even need to look. You already know which tool it was. From the ache settled like old earth in your shoulders, you lift your hands toward the sun and feel the deep velvet of soil that has stained your skin, filled your nails, nestled beneath the curves of each cuticle. as if it never intends to be washed away. You do not name it. You do not call it dirt. It is part of you now, woven into the pattern of your flesh, a signature you cannot erase. Your fingers press into the ground's surface, into the cradle of seed, grain too small to feel beneath your fingertips, yet enough to insist your palms remember. The weight of the earth presses back, heavy and cool, as though the world itself sighs through the soil. You feel each pebble's edge, each crumb's collapse, as your hand sinks deeper, searching, gathering. It grounds you, a silent accompaniment to the thrum of blood in your wrist, to the faint pulse before your thumb's first knuckle. There's a thin film of dust that slides down your arm once you stand, leaving behind trails, ribbons of labor, of time. You wipe them on your tunic, but they do not fully lift. They remain, even after the well-worn cloth is shaken out, and even when your sibling shifts in bed behind you, a muted murmur in the still house. You feel their presence as always, soft and unending, like the memory of a cough that lingers after the sound is gone. Your feet sink into something damp near the furrow's edge, mud, warm and loamy, clinging with a quiet insistence. It grabs at the leather of your shoe, tugs gently, as though it wants to join you in your journey. Each step is an effort, a negotiation. You lift your foot to break free, and the soil sighs away once more. It has found a home in every crease of your soul, every pressure point of your weight. You lift your sock later and find smears of brown, stubborn, as though you had stepped barefoot all along. The air is heavy with the scent of turned earth, of rain that hasn't yet fallen. It's an odor you know without meaning to. The scent of seeds that might sprout or might rot, and of other lives that disappear into this same dark blanket. The goat snorts nearby, uneasy with your intrusion into its boundary. It knows the land differently, as its living room, its dining table. You command the soil with purpose, hungry for sustenance, forced to coax life from its folds. The goat commands it because it is at home. You borrow the soil's favor for a season. Time drags. You press the soil around a freshly planted seed, tamp it down with flat palms, and the smell of damp earth fills your nostrils. There's a whisper of effort in your body, a tightening of muscles you had forgotten when it began, and that ache remains even after you step back. Your hands carry the memory of that pressure even in stillness, pulsing faintly with the muscles' recoil. Beneath your fingernails lie thin threads of roots, gnarled and fine like hair. You dig them out later, one by one, pressing them between bare fingers until they slide free. The edges of your nails feel raw, the skin roughened, and you breathe through it because then it doesn't scream, just hums with quiet endurance. You think of no other life but this slow communion between you and the earth, this dialogue of friction, this acknowledgement that all toil is recorded in the body. Rain begins, not in drops, but in mists, gliding across your skin before it regrets itself and falls fully. The soil drinks it in greedily, settles around seeds deeper, around roots older. Your clothes grow heavy, woven wool at first dry, then moist, then damp as though you had lain across the earth entirely. You brush your arm against a fence post. Soil rides up your sleeve, staining the linen. When the drips become steady, you recede to the shade of the house, feeling the sudden difference of dry air against your damp skin. The sun is gone behind lowering clouds, and everything, your hands, your tools, even the goat, smells of cleansing rain and darkness. Inside, you carry mud on your boots. You do not scrub them. You press them into the dirt outside a door where the sibling sleeps. They mutter something, and the soft bench beneath them sighs. You place your hands on the wall to steady yourself, the rough-hewn plank biting into your palm. It draws more soil from beneath your nails, as if the wall itself demands sharing of your labor. And you give it, without question. A rat scratches somewhere below the floorboards. You feel its vibrations more than hear them, like a song you cannot sing but can feel through the wood. The goat blinks at you through a slit in the door. You pet its flank absent-mindedly, raking mud into its coarse fur. It does not complain. It is merciful that way. You strip the tunic off later, hang it over the line outside the door. Soil begins to fall away, drifting down in tiny dust motes that dance in the last of the daylight. But some part remains. It stains the collar, the cuffs. It burrows at the seams. You lift the tunic slowly so that light doesn't disturb you, and think that part of you is not yours anymore. It is soil, worn inside your skin as comfortably as your own pulse. You climb onto the bed of straw, still feeling the weight and the looseness of earth beneath your skin. A breeze slips through the cracks in the walls, carrying tiny fragments of the outside world. Leaves, insects, rain. You breathe them into your lungs, along with the dust you no longer try to exhale. The sibling snores now, deeper, steadier. The neighbor has retreated. Only the goat shifts in its pen outside, possibly unsettled by the returning rain. Your fingers inspect your nails one last time, wiping them not clean, but steady. You slide beneath the woolen blanket, which smells faintly of smoke and time. The soil beneath your skin pulses in rhythm with you, quiet and constant. You press your cheek into the straw and feel the warmth of everything you've touched settle against your face. The mattress is hard. Your body is full. In the thick quiet that follows, the soil stands inside you like an heirloom, heavy and silent. A breath slips out through your lips, and each bruise in your muscles exhales too. You and the earth have become one another's record. The night draws in closer. Somewhere behind a wooden wall, the rat scratches again. The goat shifts. Your breath slows. A breeze, damp and gentle, rustles over the straw. And then, softly, the world exhales with you, soil and breath together, settling. Softly you shift where you lie, feeling the straw beneath your body stir, as though memory itself breathes under your weight. And somewhere just beyond the thin wall, the neighbor coughs again, persistent, low, a reminder that some things creep through thatch and oak faster than you could imagine. You sense the gossip first as a movement, an echo of conversation you never truly heard, yet one that coils around your bones before you even open your eyes. It does not announce itself. It glides in on the same drafts that seep beneath the door, subtle, restless, watching. You notice it in the way the sibling mumbles in sleep, as though they carry scraps of someone else's voice. You feel its tremor in the goat's bristles when it shuffles past your ankles in the dimness. Even the rat's clawed pattering on the floor seems rhythmic, deliberate, like it's tapping out a warning or a secret it barely understands. Gossip is not spoken here. It is felt. It is the silence that follows a whisper, the pause before you realize your cheek has grown warm with unease. You taste it on your tongue like the faint tang of metal, though no blade has pressed there, and you hear it as the soft tilt of a head in the dark, the unspoken question hanging just below the rafters. You shift again and settle deeper into the straw. Outside, the moon drifts behind low clouds, casting muted shapes upon the floor. Each shadow seems laden with intent. You imagine voices along the street tonight, some third-hand chuckle, someone clearing their throat, someone else's footwear brushing against stone. No one says a word, but everyone knows. The half-heard rumors float through the night sky like dust motes, settling on door sills, lingering between floorboards, settling behind your ears. Your mind wanders to the baker's daughter. You don't know her name, and yet she is at the center of something. You feel her there beside the hearth, kneading dough while hearing someone mention her again. The rhythm becomes uneven, memory unhinged, but you are not surprised. That is how gossip moves, like a mist thickening in still air, pooling around unaware feet. You try to steady your breath. You recall laying wood for the fire earlier, your hands blistering even as you paused because you heard soft raised voices drifting across the yard. Someone had said her name again, like an accusation or a confession. The rasp of wood, the sweet, sour burn of soot on your skin. You carried it all back inside, along with the rumor, like part of the day's harvest. It finds you here now, mingling with the soot and the night air and the damp breath of straw. You taste it again, weedy, dusty, stale, like bread left too long in the dark. Bread that once brought comfort, now stale with hearsay. In the low hush, you feel the siblings shift. They lean closer. In another moment, you would hear breath, heartbeat, the slight rise in temperature at their collarbone. Instead, you feel the sense that they know more than they say. You feel it like a bruise forming under skin, present, tender, the beginning of something that will not quite leave. Your gaze drifts to the corner where shapes gather and dissolve in the weak torchlight. The goat stands sentinel, watching. You imagine it knows every rumor, not by listening, but by living in the spaces between words. It nods when no one sees, as though it understands the currents that flow through such silence. Gossip travels faster than the plague, they say. But plague can kill you. Gossip cannot. Instead, it burrows, it colonizes, it multiplies where no wound shows, and you are already infected. You shift your fingers across the straw, feeling each sharp piece, each faded ribbon. They scratch soft warnings beneath your skin. Even they carry the memory of voices brushing against brightness, rushing lullabies, half-spoken names. You try to imagine a soundless world, no rasp of breath, no tapping of paws, no rumble of laughter or guilt echoing beyond the walls. But there is always a residual hum of intent. You feel it now as tension pooling in your chest, an ache as slow and deep as winter. You inhale the scents again, damp straw, old wool, night-stale air, and you know you will not sleep easy tonight. Not until these unseen intruders are exorcised from the rooms and the yard and the street. Not until the rumor dissipates like fog in the dawn. A branch taps the roof. A murmur outside the open loft where straw drifts like quiet ghosts. A cat's alarmed mewl from the corner where the goat slumbers. You listen, melding each undertone as though they carry the syllables of a secret. You don't speak them, but you feel them. You press your eyelids together. In darkness, faces form. The baker's daughter, her father's bowed back, the neighbor with hooded eyes. Words hover behind them, curved and grim. What was said? What was heard? You try to piece it together, but there's no structure. It is a cloud that shifts as soon as you reach for it, a footprint vanishing in the mud. You shift again. A splinter tears your finger. You taste copper. You bring your hand to your lips and taste it. Not blood exactly, but the sharp synthetic pull of worry. You draw a brisk breath, trying to steady the pulse racing through your veins. You do not speak. You cannot speak. But the story is inside you now, an ember lodged in the bed of your chest. You feel its heat even as you will it to grow cold. You will it to float out through your pores, carried off with breath. A cough behind the wall, closer now. Someone awake, perhaps sick, perhaps wary. You think of the plague again and shake your head. Not plague, gossip, not death, but the soft erosion of trust, the hollowing of comfort. The world becomes less kin, more suspicion. The goat shifts again, teeth grinding. You feel its presence more than see it. You imagine its breath brushing your hand, like comfort returning. But it offers only neutrality, the goat. Neither judge nor confidant, only creature of habit and survival. You slip your hand beneath the blanket, feel the rough texture of wool. Imagine the threads whispering secrets, older than the walls. And you wonder if the walls themselves have ears. Your hearing becomes too acute in the dark. You hear the flame gutter in the hearth behind you. You hear the wind swirl beneath the ridge. You hear every breath rising from every body beneath this roof. And the rumor is there too, woven into each intake of breath, an echo of intent. You reach out, brush the sleeve of your tunic, press it to your face. It smells of your skin, linen, sweat. You press harder. You want something pure, something your own. You want silence that isn't shaped by half-truths. From beyond the wall, a door closes. You start, but not from surprise, from déjà vu, from realization that someone else might also lay awake tonight, feeling this same current. Someone else with soil-stained hands, dirty fingernails, keepers of rumor. They too will taste the weight of words in the darkness. Sleep, when it finally comes, will come in fragments. Sharp dreams of words you never spoke, of accusations you never owned, of the baker's daughter with blank eyes meeting your own, of fellow villagers standing in circles, faces half hidden, voices half lost, shapes of silence just beyond your reach. Your breath slows to match the cadence of your calf muscles ache, the rasp beneath your rib cage unraveling slowly. You hear the distant structure of darkness, how the night builds, holds, releases. And in that release, you fold in. The rumor drifts deeper into your bones. It settles, silt-like, between your ribs. You do not fight it anymore. You dream it. Half-truths, half-lies, boundaries dissolving in moonlight. A goat's sigh, a rat's patter, a cough drawn into the night. These are your lullaby now. Not gentle, but honest. And under this weight, you drift, surrendering to the ache of knowing. Gossip travels faster than the plague, but your breath is not yet gone. It has not stopped. Not really. Not fully. You tell yourself it eased for a handful of heartbeats sometime in the night, a lull between drips, a sigh in the middle of dreaming. But the memory is too soft around the edges to believe. The truth is that the rain never truly ends. It changes its shape. It trades one rhythm for another. It becomes mist. It becomes drizzle. It becomes that silent kind of damp that does not fall from the sky, but simply appears in your clothes, and in your lungs, and in the bend of your knees. It never asks permission. It simply is. This morning, if morning is the right word for the light that barely shifts the gray, it greets you like an old acquaintance you owe something to. It seeps through the eaves where the straw sags in apology. It drips from the edge of the low roof and forms quiet little craters in the mud. It hangs in the air like someone else's breath. It clings to your tunic as you shift under the weight of the cold that's moved in beside it, the two of them cohabiting now, neither in a hurry to leave. The fire didn't last the night. You'd banked it carefully, the way your father once showed you. Or maybe it was someone else's father. It's hard to say now. But the logs were too damp, or the night too long, or the rain simply too clever. What's left in the hearth is ash and hope, both gray and too light to feel like anything real. You prod the remains with a stick, not because it will help, but because doing something is better than admitting you're not sure what to do. Around you, the longhouse breathes in that quiet, resigned way. The walls sag with age and weather, not crumbling yet, but always threatening to. The thatch above you drips in a rhythm you know better than your own heartbeat. 3 drops from the back corner, then 1 from the beam over the door. Then silence, then the same again. The pattern is comfort, in its way. It means nothing has changed. It means nothing has gotten worse. It means also that nothing has gotten better. You pull your wool shawl tighter around your shoulders. It's damp too, of course, but it still remembers how to be warm. In places, the weave has stiffened with mildew. In others, it's thin enough to see the shape of your arm beneath it. You don't remember when it stopped smelling like lanolin and started smelling like the inside of the grain bin after a flood. You don't ask anyone else if theirs smells the same. You assume it does. Your feet find the floor, with the hesitancy of someone stepping into a puddle even when indoors. The rushes need changing. They always do. But there's no dry straw left and no time to gather it. So you live with the damp underfoot. Your soles are calloused enough that you no longer flinch. You tell yourself that's a kind of strength. Outside, the mud has taken on a personality. It pulls at your boots like a child with sticky hands, clinging, refusing to let go. It remembers your steps, shaping itself to your gait. You slide more than you walk, skimming across the slick path to the woodpile, which is not so much a pile anymore as a soggy suggestion of wood, moss-covered and sulking. You reach for a piece that seems less ruined than the others, and find it heavier than it should be. Waterlogged, sullen, like everything else. You try to light the fire again. It coughs smoke at you in protest, winding around your face with damp fingers, filling your nose, your throat, your eyes. You blink through it and hold your breath. The fire sputters, then falters, then settles into a kind of defeated smolder. You accept it. You have long since stopped wishing for flames that leap. Someone mutters behind you, shifting in their sleep. A child's foot kicks out from the furs, landing with a slap against the wood floor. Another voice groans, low and indistinct, not quite awake, not quite dreaming. You hear the snore of someone else in the far end of the room, interrupted by a cough. Wet, tired, lingering longer than it should. You press your hand against the side of the hearth and feel the stone cold beneath your palm. Even the stones feel tired. Later, you step outside again, not because you want to, but because the goat has opinions. She bleats with the same tone she uses when you are late, or when her water is cloudy, or when a chicken has tried to steal her spot in the dry corner of the pen. You find her glaring, eyes narrowed, fur already spiked with drizzle. She blames you. You accept this. You do not apologize aloud. She would not be satisfied. Feeding her is harder in the rain. The hay is damp. The bucket slippery. Your fingers fumble more than usual. The cold has crept into your joints like a guest who arrived last season and forgot to leave. Your thumb doesn't bend like it used to. Your knees complain when you crouch. But the goat still wants what the goat wants. You tip the bucket toward her and she snorts at it, offended, then eats anyway. The sky does not change. The sky never changes now. It is a permanent bruise, soft and sullen and spread across the heavens like an afterthought. You glance at it only once. There's nothing new to see. In the village, the people move slower when it rains. Not because they're weaker, but because haste leads to slips, and slips lead to breaks, and breaks lead to days in bed with fever. No one can afford that. So you shuffle. You brace. You nod without speaking. You watch the way others carry their weight, how they shift it from side to side to keep upright. There is a dignity in it, a kind of stubborn elegance. You admire it without letting your face say so. The church bell sounds like it's underwater. It rings with a muted tone, like someone wrapped it in wool. You hear it anyway. You always do. It means something you can't remember, or maybe it just means that time is still passing, even if it feels like you're standing still. Inside, the walls smell worse. Everything sealed tight against the cold, and so every smell lingers. Wet wool, old stew, smoke, sweat, foot rot, rain. You stir the pot with a spoon that has long since lost its shape. The soup is thinner than usual. The onions were soft when you found them. The carrots limp. You added more water. Everyone will say it tastes fine. Everyone will know it doesn't. By evening, the walls drip in time with your thoughts. The corner by the hearth leaks again. Someone places a bowl beneath it. You count the drops. You stop. You count again. You stop. The candle stub fights for life. The flame stutters. The wax leans. You guard it with your palm like it's a baby bird. The dark leans in around you, waiting for it to fail. When you lie down, your blanket sticks to your knees. Not wet exactly, just unwilling to part from you. The rushes beneath you have gone soft. You think about how long it's been since you felt a breeze that was not soaked in sorrow. Someone coughs again. A rat scrapes under the floor. A baby whines. You shift. The rain is still falling. Of course it is. And it will be again tomorrow. You close your eyes, not in defiance, not in hope, just because they're tired. Somewhere nearby, a drip becomes a drumbeat, and then a whisper, and then nothing, and then sleep, damp and slow and full of surrender. The drip that lulled you into sleep has found a new rhythm by morning. You didn't notice the shift, not exactly, but your dreams started humming to a different tempo, and now the sound is wrong. Not loud, just wrong. As if the world has rotated slightly in the night, and nothing quite fits where it did before. Your blanket clings like a second skin, still damp, still heavy, but familiar enough that you keep it draped over your shoulders as you shuffle toward the door, your feet tracing yesterday's steps, today's hesitation. The longhouse smells like wet bread and the kind of smoke that no longer carries warmth, just the memory of it. Someone is still snoring. Someone else stirs the embers with half-hearted resolve. The floor groans beneath you as if it too would rather stay wrapped in straw. You lean against the threshold, forehead pressed to the doorframe that's been worn smooth by generations of tired shoulders. The world outside is the color of old pewter. Gray skies, gray mud, gray stones glistening like river fish. You do not step out right away. The goat will see you. She always does. She watches and she judges. When you finally move, it is not with purpose, but with inevitability. A slow lurch into a day that was already happening without you. The door creaks like it's tattling on you, and the first sound you hear, before bird song, before the slosh of muck underfoot, before your own sigh, is her, the goat. She announces her presence with a bleat so deliberate it feels like mockery. You squint toward the corner of the pen, where she stands with one leg slightly bent and her head cocked just enough to communicate disdain. Her ears flick, her eyes narrow, and she exhales through her nose like she's just smelled your thoughts and found them lacking. You mutter something under your breath that isn't quite an apology and isn't quite a curse. She hears it anyway. You're sure of it. You cross the yard, boots squelching through earth that has forgotten how to be firm. The mud is deeper than yesterday and colder. It grips your soles with the hunger of a thing that remembers bones. The rain hasn't fallen in hours, but its legacy remains in every puddle and every sagging roofline. The goat watches you approach with the stillness of someone planning something. She does not blink. She does not greet you. She simply exists, with an authority you no longer question. You reach for the gate and she takes one step back, just enough to let you in, but not enough to make room. She wants you to work for it. You do. The rope is knotted in the way you tied it yesterday, the way you've tied it every day for weeks, and yet today it defies you. Wet hemp, cold fingers, a knot that has learned stubbornness from its owner. You tug, you twist. The rope gives eventually, but not to you, to itself. It releases like it's done with you. She turns her head slowly as you untangle the lead, the motion theatrical. Her breath fogs in the air between you. You smell hay and something sour. Her judgment grows louder without words. You are once again the bumbling human who doesn't understand the natural order of things. She moves before you tell her to, not away from the gate, not toward the water trough, just sideways. Her hooves press into the earth like she's placing stamps on a disapproval letter. You follow, because what else is there to do? You carry the bucket. She follows you now, reluctantly, with the air of a duchess being asked to cross a puddle. You try not to spill. She tries not to care. The two of you make a strange procession across the yard, tethered, not by rope, but by routine. At the trough, she waits, not patiently, not helpfully, just waits. You pour the water and she sniffs it first, as always. A ritual. You wonder if she knows she does it every time. You wonder if she thinks you're the one repeating yourself. She drinks with small, wet gulps, and you find yourself counting them. 1, 2, 3. You lose track. Start again. The sound is oddly comforting, like rain against a stone window, like soup stirred in an iron pot, like something alive that doesn't need you but doesn't leave. When she finishes, she looks at you again. Not for thanks, not for more, just to acknowledge that you're still here. You scratch her behind the ear because it seems like the thing to do. She accepts it. Barely. Back at the pen, she resists the tether again. Not because it's new, but because you are. To her, every morning is a reminder that you still haven't earned her respect. She lets you fasten the rope, but shifts her weight just enough to make it difficult. You sigh through your teeth. She flutters her ears in victory. The day moves on without you. Smoke trails from another chimney down the path. The blacksmith's hammer starts its song, echoing through the chill air. Chickens scratch near the woodpile, clucking like gossips with nowhere else to be. You watch all this from the fence, leaning on the gatepost with your thumb pressed into a notch that your grandfather carved, or maybe your grandfather's neighbor. The goat chews a dry twig with exaggerated slowness. She is still staring at you. You stare back, half smiling in the way people do when they're not sure if they're amused or losing an argument. Her eyes are ancient. You don't know how old she is. You suspect she doesn't either. But she remembers everything, every slip, every stumble, every time you poured the water too fast, or stepped on her hay, or tied the rope too tight. You turn away before she wins whatever silent contest you've been playing. She grunts softly behind you, not quite a farewell. You nod at the sound and return to the house, where the hearth has not warmed the stones, and the walls still drip, and the stew has grown thin. Someone is whispering. A cousin, maybe, or a neighbor leaning too close to the fire. Their words are soft, meaningless, but they fill the space the goat left behind. You wrap your shawl tighter around your chest and sit near the door, just close enough to see the pen through a crack in the wood, just far enough to pretend you're not watching her. She's lying down now, front legs tucked, head tilted, still watching you, always. You rest your forehead on the doorframe once more. You think about how strange humans must look to goats, always hurrying, always carrying things, always fussing over what's already broken. You wonder what she makes of your worries, your aches, your rituals. Outside, the sky is beginning to shift, not brightening, not clearing, just changing hue, from pewter to ash to the soft gray of worn cloth. A breeze stirs the edge of the thatch, and you hear the goat huff once, then settle. You close your eyes, just for a moment. In the quiet, her breath and yours sound oddly the same, and then the wind carries it away. It begins in whispers, not from your lips, but from others. From corners of rooms where bread is broken and crumbs ignored. From spaces near the hearth where too many elbows meet, and no one wants to ask the wrong question. No one says you're sick, not at first. Not aloud, not directly. It's spoken instead with glances, with shared looks over soup pots, with the slight tightening of someone's mouth when they notice you didn't finish your crust, with how no one sits beside you anymore, not even the goat. You didn't notice it truly until your bed stopped being a place to leave and became something like a net. Your limbs took on new weight, and every straw beneath you started to feel like the beginning of a bruise. The blanket that once barely shielded you from the night's chill now clings like wet moss. Dampness wraps around your skin even when there is no water, and warmth comes in flashes, like embarrassment, brief and sharp and quickly gone. It's not the sort of sick that throws you into screams. Number. It's the slow kind, the kind that settles in the joints and hums, the kind that makes you forget what day it is. Not because you're dreaming, but because days don't matter once the ache begins. The fire still crackles. The bread still bakes. The bucket is still filled. But you lie there, sinking into your own shape, becoming a part of the floor, the blanket, the room. Your hands become untrustworthy. One morning you try to tie your own wool sleeve and discover your fingers no longer obey you fully. They shake when they shouldn't. They clutch at the edge of the blanket too tightly, forgetting softness. And then, just as suddenly, they go still again, cold as forgotten broth. Breath becomes a noisy companion. You notice it now. Each inhale scratches faintly, like a rat beneath the floorboards. Each exhale feels stolen. You cough only when no one can hear, or you try to, because once they hear, they'll speak the words. And once they speak the words, the room will change again. No one wants to name it. Not really. Not even the old woman with her handful of herbs and her bucket of smells. She sits beside you once in the morning and again before dusk, muttering as though you're not there. She doesn't look into your eyes. Not anymore. Her hands are rough and cracked, and she touches your forehead like one touches the wall after a storm, checking for cracks, but expecting the worst. Illness, in the medieval sense, is not a personal visitor. It does not come just for you. It sweeps through the household like smoke through holes in the thatch. The boy who once played with sticks now lies silent beside the fire, his cheeks red in a way that doesn't mean health. The man with the limp has started sleeping longer. Your sibling, the one who once kicked in their sleep, now sleeps curled and still, too still. Only the goat seems unchanged, and even it watches you with new interest, as though it can smell your fading. Your dreams are the worst of it, not because they're terrifying. Terror would be too sharp. They're soft, endless, directionless. In them, you walk through rooms you do not recognize, with ceilings far too low and floors that shift beneath your feet. People without faces hand you bowls of something warm and say nothing. A dog follows you, though you've never had one, and every time you turn around to look at it, it turns into someone you once knew. You wake from these dreams more tired than before. And then there are the hours when you don't dream at all. You just drift. Breathing becomes the only proof you're still here. You listen to your own ribs rise, fall, stick, rasp. You count the breaths between the coughs of others in the room. You begin to mark time not by sunlight or shadow, but by who groans first, who coughs second, who mutters names in their sleep by the third breath after midnight. Food comes in small cups now. No one trusts you with a full bowl. You sip, if you're lucky. The broth is thin and has the faint taste of something that once met a vegetable but lost its way. Still, it is hot, and you pretend it helps. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it only reminds you of how far your hunger has gone, left you behind like everything else. And yet, the world doesn't end. That's the strange part. The fire is still tended. The roof still leaks. The door still creaks open when someone leaves for wood. Life goes on with startling indifference to your condition. Even your blanket continues its slow migration away from your feet every night, as though it too has grown weary of staying. Occasionally, someone speaks to you. Their voice sounds far away. It's never about you. Not really. They ask if you've drunk water. They mention that someone else is worse. They say a name you don't know and sigh. And then they leave, satisfied with their visit. You lie there, trying to remember what it feels like to answer a question without coughing halfway through. Illness doesn't just come into your body. It comes into your bed, into your thoughts, into the way people treat you. It seeps into the wood, into the straw, into the routine. You become a fixture, a part of the scenery. People speak around you. They walk past you. Your blanket is adjusted, but your face is rarely seen. The goat has begun sleeping nearer to you now. You'd find it endearing if you could muster anything beyond apathy. It chews something, probably your corner of the mat, and it looks at you with the blank intelligence of a being that has seen too many winters to care. Still, its warmth helps. Its weight is real, more real than your dreams. You've lost track of the days, of the order of them, of whether you are getting better or worse. Some mornings you can sit, some nights you cannot move at all. Progress is a concept meant for those who have choices. You, now, only endure, and endure you do. You lie still when everything hurts. You sit when you must. You drink when you can. You cough when it cannot be helped. And you wait for the fever to break, for the ache to lessen, for someone to say your name like you still matter, for the world to tilt back toward you, just slightly. Because illness, like the wind, eventually moves on. Not always, not for everyone, but often enough that people begin to hope again, even when they shouldn't. And in the middle of that hope, you shift beneath your blanket, feel the cold sweat on your back begin to dry. You take a breath that doesn't rattle quite so much, and you listen. The goat is asleep now, legs tucked beneath it like a folded cart. The sibling beside you mumbles something incoherent but familiar. Outside, the wind moves the thatch like an old lullaby, and somewhere in your bones, the weight begins to lift. Not entirely, not yet, but enough to notice. Just enough. Enough to feel the dampness cooling at your temple. Enough to hear your name again, said softly, as though it still belongs to you. And for now, that is all. That is enough. That is everything. And then, like breath itself, the night fades, not with noise, not with light, but with stillness. A quiet thing that lingers and disappears. The fire has dulled to a red that barely glows, its light fading into the cracks between the floorboards and the folds of old blankets. Somewhere in the dark, a log gives out with a tired sigh, its embers settling like old bones. The warmth doesn't reach you anymore. Not truly. Not as it did in the moments before sleep was supposed to come. But sleep does not come. It hovers just beyond reach, a breath withheld, a blanket refused. You lie still, though your thoughts do not. Your limbs are heavy but restless, caught between wanting to move and knowing the floor is colder than the bed, and the bed is cold enough. The others sleep, or they pretend well enough. You can hear them. A shifting limb, a cough that never fully leaves the throat, the faint smacking of lips against dreams only they can taste. Someone murmurs something incoherent, something meant for another time or another world. You do not answer. You only listen. Outside, the wind finds new gaps in the walls, and its whistle is different now, more like a whine than a breath. It slips under the door and across the stone, curls against your feet like something alive. It never leaves entirely, just circles back again, and again, and again. The thatch above you groans with the weight of moisture it cannot shed. Somewhere in the rafters, something shifts. A rat, a squirrel, a memory. It moves, pauses, moves again, then disappears, not with a sound, but with the absence of one. It is that kind of night. You try not to shiver, because shivering is noise, and noise means others wake, and others waking means murmurs, complaints, and the uneasy dance of shared misery. Better to bear the cold in silence than break the night with motion. Your eyes are open, though the darkness makes no difference. Whether they are open or closed, the black remains. You blink only to remind yourself you still can. A small act, a private ritual. You blink again. There is a straw beneath your shoulder blade that no adjustment can dislodge. It has become a part of you, as much as the wool wrapped tight around your middle. The blanket has pulled to one side in your sleepless shifting. You do not reach for it. That would require commitment. and you are too tired for commitment, yet too awake to rest. Your nose is cold. Your toes are colder. You curl yourself around your own body like something hiding from itself. It doesn't help. Nothing does. You remember briefly what it felt like to be warm once, really warm, as a child pressed against your mother's side, wrapped in the safety of another body's breath. That warmth is gone now. She is gone. And the warmth has gone with her, out into the wind, into the forest, into the grave. The silence is never total. It's always a patchwork. Breath, wind, straw. A snore so distant it could belong to the house itself. You hear it all. You catalog it. It becomes the map by which you measure the hours. The slow migration of sound from one end of the room to the other. First the goat, restless in the corner. Then the thump of someone turning in their sleep. Then a drip. Somewhere, somehow, water finds its way through the thatch again. A slow, steady beat into a hollow bowl. That bowl will be full by morning. You know it without needing to see. The itch behind your ear returns. You scratch it through the fabric of your cap, slow and dull. Then stillness again. A breath. Another. The ceiling does not change. The dark remains. You think for a moment about the days when you could sleep without planning it, when exhaustion was simpler, less cruel, when the bed was a promise, not a trap. You remember falling asleep mid-bite as a child, head dropped into a bowl, waking to laughter. No one laughs anymore. Not at night. Not now. The goat grunts. Not loud. Just once. A reminder. You wonder if it sleeps with its eyes open, if it dreams of open pastures or simply of not being here. Its presence is comforting and slightly absurd. It smells faintly of wet wool and old hay. You smell it even now, though it lies a few feet away, its breath low and steady. A better sleeper than you, apparently. You shift again, this time more deliberately, trying to coax your body into a new discomfort that might be less unbearable. The straw crackles like dried bones. The blanket resists, half tangled beneath someone else. You do not tug. That would be a declaration of war. In the night, blankets are borders. Peace is held together by shared cold and mutual suffering. Your mind turns to things you do not want to think about. Things always louder in the dark. The bad harvest. The cough in your brother's chest that hasn't gone. The neighbor who hasn't come out in days. The priest who said last week's frost was punishment. You do not believe him, but the thought clings like the damp on your skin. You count your breaths for a while. You make it to 17 before you lose track. You try again. 8, 13, 4. The numbers mean nothing. They are a lullaby for a brain too tired to follow and too stubborn to sleep. Something falls. A pot, perhaps, somewhere outside, or a branch surrendering to wind. The house doesn't flinch. Neither do you. The world breaks itself in small ways all the time. It is not your concern. Your stomach growls, quietly, politely. The kind of hunger that doesn't ask for food. It knows better. Just acknowledgement. You press your hand to it, a poor substitute for a meal. It rumbles again, then gives up. Your hands are dry. You rub your fingers together, feeling the little cracks, the dirt pressed into them by the day's labor. You didn't wash properly. There wasn't time. There wasn't heat. There never is. The night is endless, and yet it is always ending. You feel it in the subtle shift of air, in the way the goat grows still, in the faintest hint of blue behind your eyelids, like a secret the sky hasn't told yet. Morning is coming, but it is not here, not yet. And so you lie there, waiting, not for dreams, not for rest, just for the darkness to become less dark, for the straw to lose its sting, for the cough to stop, for the bowl to stop filling, for the rat to stop scratching, for the goat to stop breathing so loudly. But none of it stops. And that, in its own way, is comforting. because it means the world is still turning, slowly, grudgingly, like a cart with a broken wheel. You breathe again. The air is colder than it was an hour ago. Your lips are dry. Your thoughts are soft. The itch behind your ear is gone now, replaced by something else. You do not know when the night began. You do not know when it will end. But you are still here, still listening, still breathing, still watching the dark shift and stretch and settle. And as the first hint of morning scrapes against the wall like a blunt knife, you close your eyes. Not to sleep, just to rest, just for a moment, just to drift. And the breath leaves you, slow, soft, unbothered, like fog rising from stone. A quiet thing that lingers and disappears. The blue of not quite morning has receded again, swallowed back into the folds of a sky that cannot decide what to be. You had thought the day would break fully, but it hasn't. It only cracked, briefly, and then closed again, as if ashamed of showing too much light. And so the house is dim once more, though not quite dark. Not enough to sleep, not enough to see, just enough to wait. The air inside feels stiller now, but not quiet. The goat mutters in its sleep, hooves twitching against packed earth. Something on the shelf shifts as the timber wall creaks, and your sibling stirs beside you, not waking, not sleeping, just moving in the way restless bodies do when they've grown tired of being tired. You stare at the ceiling again, which is barely visible, a patchwork of beams and shadows. Your eyes are dry now, dry and gritty from too little blinking, too much thinking. There is no real difference between last night and this morning, only that now the chill bites differently, not from below but from above, seeping through the thatch like a judgment. And still, no one speaks. There is no fire, not yet. Someone will have to light it, but no one moves. There is a silence that waits for volunteers, and you do not offer. You are too used to this stale pause, this moment when the world is awake but pretending otherwise. And so you lie still, wrapped in the thinning remnants of sleep, and let your thoughts creep slowly into the corners. Eventually, someone stirs enough to rise. Not you. You feel the blanket shift, sense the warmth depart, hear bare feet touch cold earth with the reluctant slap of flesh meeting frost. The fire will take time. It always does. You hear the muttered curses, the strike of flint, the puff of breath on reluctant coals. But no light comes, because the fire is not the light you crave. The fire is flicker and smoke and labor. What you want is the candle. And there, on the far shelf, tucked into its soot-rimmed holder, is the stub of wax that rules this room. It is not yours. It is not anyone's. It is everyone's. But no one touches it without permission, unspoken, but fiercely upheld. You glance toward it now, as you do every morning when the dark lingers. A pale lump, melted unevenly, hardened by cold and silence. Short, fragile, precious. It is not lit, and it will not be. Not today. Not unless someone dies, or someone is born, or something is read, something important enough to risk the wick. And nothing today feels important enough. Candles are measured not in time, but in worth. 1 inch of wax is a letter unsent, a prayer unspoken, a face unrecognized in the dark. You do not waste it. You do not touch it. You do not even ask. You simply glance toward it, longing trailing behind your eyes like frost behind a breath. You remember faintly the last time it was lit. A wedding. Or was it a funeral? The flicker had made the shadows stretch tall and regal along the wooden beams. Everyone looked more important by candlelight. Even you. Even the goat, which had watched from its corner with solemn eyes and a mouth full of straw. That moment passed quickly. The wick hissed as it died, and the dark returned, heavier for having left. You sit up slowly now, the blanket falling from your shoulders like something that no longer belongs. Your skin meets the air with a small flinch, the involuntary shudder of flesh unused to its own exposure. The chill is patient. It waits for you to forget, then creeps in again. The others do not speak. Someone coughs, someone mutters, someone scratches at a woolen sleeve, but no one dares to ask for light. Instead, they fumble, they guess. They feel along the ground for shoes, for tools, for dignity. You do the same. The morning routine is a series of practiced stumbles. There is no grace in it, only routine, repeated until it becomes instinct. You reach for the same rough tunic, still damp from yesterday's rain. You pull it over your head like a sack of regret. You do not wince, you do not sigh. You only breathe, once, deeply, and let it happen. Outside, the gray has settled. Not fog, not rain, just less color, less warmth, less reason. A kind of half-light that makes the mud look flatter, the trees look thinner, the people look like ghosts. You step outside anyway. Because there is work. There is always work. The courtyard is still, save for the chickens pecking with frantic boredom. One of them stares at you as though you've interrupted a secret meeting. You nod back. You don't know why. The day unfolds the way they all do, not in hours, but in chores. Fetch, sweep, carry, mend. Speak only when necessary. Keep your head down. Mind your hands. Keep your questions quiet. Or better yet, forget them. Because questions are useless here. And answers, the real ones, live in books no one can read, kept in corners too dark to see, guarded by candles no one can afford to burn. You remember once asking why the river curved around the village instead of through it. The answer was a shrug. That was all. Just a shrug, and then a look. A warning not to waste your words. You asked once more, something about the stars. You don't remember what. The answer came as a scolding, not for the question, but for the indulgence of it. And so you stopped asking. The questions still come sometimes in the quiet moments, when the chores fade, when the sky leans in a little closer, but you have learned to let them pass, like birds overhead, too far to catch, too loud to keep. Because answers cost more than candles, and even the candles are rationed. By midday, the light has shifted. Not grown, not warmed, just shifted. The wind is thinner now. The clouds are lower, and your breath no longer ghosts so clearly in front of you. You share a crust of bread with your sibling. Neither of you speaks. You tear slowly, chew slowly. Let the dryness of it become your companion. No one asks for more. There isn't more. There never is. The goat stares at you with the same weary judgment it reserves for moments like this. It knows. It always knows. The day slides on, sloshing like water in a cracked bowl, directionless, but in motion. You mend a fence with string and splinters. You carry wood from one place to another. You rub your hands together until the dirt becomes a second skin. The sun never appears. It hints once from behind a break in the clouds, a pale, indifferent disk, and then retreats again. You watch it go without feeling. It has betrayed you too often to earn hope. By late afternoon, the air thickens again. Dampness curls around your ankles. Your stomach is hollow but quiet. Hunger no longer knocks. It only sits. And then, as the sky darkens, not dramatically, just as a shrug, you return inside. The house is no warmer, only darker. The fire is struggling. The coals are lazy. The pot above them is barely steaming. You sit down beside it anyway. The candle still waits on the shelf, shorter than before. Perhaps someone trimmed the wick. Perhaps no one did. You cannot tell. You do not ask. You think for a moment of what you would do with it, if it were yours. You imagine lighting it just to see the walls again. Just to read a scrap of something, even if the words mean nothing. Just to chase back the night for a few minutes. Just to remind yourself that light still exists. But you don't. Because candles are not for dreams. They are for ceremony, for death, for birth, for reading the names of saints you do not know, written in ink that no one can afford. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to imagine the flame, to remember what light looks like, how it dances, how it bends, how it dies. The others settle around you, some muttering, some shifting. The house breathes slowly now, like an old man reluctant to rest. You hear the drip of rain again, soft but insistent. From the ceiling or from the past, you don't check. You sit in the dark. The candle stays unlit. The questions stay unanswered. But the wax is still there. And in a place like this, that is something. A small, silent thing that lingers and disappears. The sound comes before the thought. Not sudden, not sharp. It rolls. It lingers. A single low note stretched across the air like a length of old wool. Rough, gray, and endless. The bell. You do not look up when it rings. You do not count the chimes. You no longer wonder what it means. It has rung for births, and it has rung for deaths, and for days when neither could be told apart. It has rung in celebration, though no one in your house had ever celebrated. It has rung in warning, though by the time anyone understood the warning, the thing had already happened. It rings again now, not loud, but deep, like something pulled up from the bottom of a well, a note that vibrates through the marrow instead of the air. You feel it more than hear it, and it stays with you long after the air goes still. The others do not speak. You know they have heard it too, the way your sibling stops chewing, the way your father stiffens beside the hearth, the way your neighbor across the way pauses his sweeping broom frozen mid-stroke. It is not a noise to ignore, nor is it one to answer. It is simply to be known. It announces itself, and then it disappears. But it never leaves. You are already outside by the time the third bell comes. Not because you were told, not because you must, but because that is how days move now. Not by sun or by hunger, but by the sound of that hollow iron mouth, deciding things it was never asked to decide. The path to the church is as it always is. Mud, half-frozen and greedy. Stones that never sit right beneath your feet. Walls leaning too close, as if the village is tired of standing and ready to fold in on itself. There is no rush, no urgency. Everyone walks the same way, slowly, deliberately, heads bent not in reverence but in resignation. You join the drift of bodies, cloaks pulled tight, faces unreadable, eyes locked somewhere between the ground and the clouds. Even the goat follows, some paces behind, uninvited but expected. The church squats at the edge of the village like an old judgment no one can erase. Stone and moss and cracked glass, always colder inside than out, always darker, even when candles are lit. And the candles are never all lit. You enter through the side, because the front is not for people like you. The front is for those who know the priest's name, who have names worth speaking aloud, who sit on benches that do not splinter beneath them. You slip into the shadows along the wall. There is no seat, only space. You are not here to be seen. You are here to be measured. The bell has stopped now. It no longer needs to speak. Its message has been delivered. It is time to confess. You do not speak your sins. No one does. Not here. Not aloud. You only kneel, if your knees allow, or bow your head if they do not. The body says what the mouth cannot, and you let the stillness name you. There are things you might have done. A piece of bread taken before the rest. A glance too long at someone who belongs to someone else. Words muttered under your breath when no one was meant to hear. You do not know if these count. You do not know what counts anymore. Sometimes you feel as though your sins are not your own, that they drift through the village like smoke, seeping into whomever breathes too deeply, that the wrongs you carry were handed to you before you could speak, and now you simply polish them out of habit. The priest's voice arrives like dust, soft, gray, and settling on everything. You do not hear the words. You have heard them too often. They blur. They merge. They become rhythm rather than meaning. A lullaby for the guilty. You do not cry. That is for the old or the desperate. You only listen, or pretend to. The candlelight trembles. The goat is outside now. You can hear it bleating once, not loud, just enough to remind the world it exists. A reminder you feel too. Your back aches. Your legs sting from kneeling. But still, you do not rise. Because the bell has not rung again. Because you are not sure if you are finished being judged. There is a list somewhere, invisible, eternal, that marks your name beside your wrongs. You imagine it often. Ink on rough parchment, smudged by time, pages curling inward like dried leaves. Your name spelled not quite right. Your sins recorded in a hand too elegant for someone like you. Mistakes, misdeeds, misrememberings, all bundled together, all held by someone who will never explain why. The priest speaks of mercy, or penance, or fire. You do not remember which. You close your eyes and let the words melt into the stone. They are not yours. They never were. When the silence comes again, it is heavy. Not like the silence at home, where it lives in the corners and under the bed. This one hangs from the rafters. It presses from above. It folds you smaller. Someone moves. A cough. A scrape of boot against stone. The faint clatter of wood on wood. The ceremony is ending. The forgiveness has been dealt. In portion or in whole, you do not know. You rise because the others rise. You follow because they move. Not because you feel lighter. Not because you feel forgiven. Because the bell has decided that you may go. Outside, the air is wetter than before. Rain, maybe. Or mist that has grown bold enough to show itself. The sky is the color of dirty wool. The path back home is familiar, but longer than it was. Or perhaps your feet are simply slower now. You glance back at the church once, just once. Its windows stare at you, unblinking. The bell is silent again, but it is still there, waiting, always waiting. By the time you return to your house, the day has dimmed again. The fire has burned low. The bread is already sliced. You take your piece and eat it quietly. No one asks where you went. No one mentions the bell. Because it rang for all of you. Because your sins are not private. Because no one is innocent. And yet the world continues. You wrap yourself in your blanket once more. You lie still, your body shaped by the chill and the wear of another day. You listen for the rat. You listen for your sibling's breath. You listen for the goat, which has found its way to the door again, as it always does. You listen for the bell, but it does not come. Only the wind moves now, soft and strange, like someone trying to forget your name. And so you close your eyes. Let it settle. Let it ache. Let the silence decide nothing at all. Just a breath, and then gone. The echo of the bell still hovers somewhere in your bones, though the sound itself is long gone, like a spoon scraped once against the bottom of an empty bowl, reverberating endlessly in the quiet of your chest. The clamor fades, but not completely. It's like everything else in this life. Nothing ever truly stops. It just becomes a part of you, heavy and silent, like worn fabric you keep wearing even after the holes spread like moss. Outside, a low wind drags across the eaves of the house, stirring the thatch like fingers raking through brittle straw. The draft finds a way in, always. It curls around your ankles, your knees, your back. You shift slightly closer to the shape beside you, not out of longing, not out of love, but out of need, which in this world might be the stronger of the two. Warmth isn't offered freely. You take it where you can. You share it because the alternative is far colder. Marriage here is not a ceremony that begins and ends in a single day. It is the quiet, endless work of not dying alone. The presence beside you, makes a rustling noise, not unlike dry leaves turning beneath a goat's hoof. They are folding wool, or perhaps unfolding it. The distinction is meaningless, and you both pretend not to notice how thin it's become. One of the corners is damp, but it'll do. Everything here is damp eventually. You remember the day the two of you were wed, not because it was lovely, but because it rained through the entire thing, and the priest forgot your name and blessed the wrong couple. No one noticed. No one corrected him. There was food later. Bread. A few lentils. The neighbors sang poorly, and someone danced, briefly, until they slipped in the mud and limped off grumbling. You shared a bed that night, which was the only real proof of the union. The sheet was rough, and you both shivered through the dark without saying a word. Since then, it has been a long, slow, shared ache, a splitting of chores, a rotation of complaints, an agreement that if one stirs the porridge, the other tends the fire. If one is bitten by fleas, the other finds the straw to shake. If one weeps, softly, in the latrine or beneath the water bucket, or with their face turned to the wall, the other does not speak of it. Ever. You would not call it tenderness, but there are moments, small ones, a crust of bread set aside, a patch sewn without asking, a wordless offering of the warmer blanket on colder nights. There is no poetry here, but there is constancy. They cough now. Once, then again, a dry sound pulled from deep. It doesn't startle you. You've learned to listen without reacting. The coughs have become familiar, like the squeak of the door or the way the goat mutters in her sleep. Everyone has their music, and you've come to know theirs. Some nights, you face each other. Most, you face away. The rhythm depends on the day, on how many buckets were carried, on how hard the bread was, on whether the hen laid or didn't, on how much of the sky you had to walk beneath. You've seen other pairs, older ones, bent like door hinges, always creaking and close to snapping, but still hanging on. You've seen them shuffle across the muddy lane, their fingers not touching, their eyes not meeting. And yet you can feel the years between them like threads of thick twine, knotting them together more securely than love songs ever could. You wonder if you'll look like that one day, or if you already do. It is strange, sometimes, to think of how much of your life has been shaped around this presence. You've built a world together, a small, unimpressive one, but a world nonetheless, a space where things have names, where the spoon goes here and the jug lives there, and the warmth is always to be found between your backs if you lie just close enough. There are arguments, of course, sometimes about nothing, sometimes about everything. The goat, the smell, the fact that the kindling is always too damp and whose fault it was this time. But the fights don't linger. They pass like colds, unpleasant, familiar, mostly harmless. The only true betrayal would be absence. You think of the stories you were told, of noble marriages and grand unions and fire-eyed passion. You think of them the way you think of dragons, distant, decorative, and entirely irrelevant. No one needs fire here. They need bread. They need someone to hold the door shut against the storm while they sleep. They need someone to know when the pail is almost empty, without being asked. There are moments, few but real, when you are grateful, when the world feels too sharp and you are too soft, and the presence beside you is the only barrier between you and the wind. They do not need to say anything. They only need to be there, breathing, real, a part of your shape now. The day is gray again, but what else is new? The clouds hang low like gossip that hasn't yet settled into fact. You both step out, one after the other, to gather something. Twigs, herbs, excuses to move. The ground is slippery, but they reach for you, briefly, without making a scene of it, just enough to keep you upright, just enough to remind you that even here, even in this cold, dull, never quite dry place, there is still someone who sees you fall and bothers to catch. Later, as the fire dies back and the house contracts inward like an old breath held too long, you sit near each other again. No words, just the sound of wood giving up its last heat, and the creak of old knees, and the wind talking to itself through the walls. You eat together, always, even when the portions shrink and the chewing feels longer than the food deserves. You've learned to match your pace to theirs. Learn to share what little joy can be pulled from the act of eating something warm, or at least not frozen. That is what a marriage is, really. Learning to chew at the same speed. When the candle burns low, they tilt it just slightly to stretch the flame a little longer. It's a small thing, but you notice. You always notice. There's no talk of what comes next. Not in this house. Not in this life. Futures are luxuries you cannot afford. But there is now, and now is bearable because of the breathing beside you. It might not be love, but it is something that stays. And that, in a world like this, where walls rot, roofs leak, neighbors vanish, and warmth is always too far away, that is the rarest thing of all. The silence stretches, the candle stutters, the shape beside you shifts again beneath the wool, brushing your knee. Just enough. And then only the sound of the wind climbing down the chimney like an old friend. Only the brittle scrape of straw beneath your spine. Only the breath that is not your own, steady and stubborn, in the dark. The night is not truly quiet, though the candle has long since drowned in its own wax, and the coals beneath the ash only breathe in tiny glows, as if even they are too tired to be fire anymore. In the dark, you can still feel the sound more than hear it. A small, persistent whimpering, like wind trying to escape through a narrow crack in the wall, but finding its path blocked by too much cold and not enough will. You lie still, not because you're asleep, but because it's the only thing left to try. The body has given up its arguments. There's no blanket you haven't already turned, no scratchy corner that hasn't been smoothed by shifting and resignation. Your limbs are quiet, but your ears are wide open. They have to be. The crying is soft now, not the urgent wail of something just born or just hurt, but the long, drawn-out complaint of something small and enduring. Something that doesn't know how to stop crying anymore, so it does it out of habit. A child, you think. But in this lightless silence, it could also be a memory. They are always crying. Not just yours, if they are even yours, but all of them. The house seems to grow them in the corners like moss. Sticky-handed, red-faced creatures that emerge from straw and stain, smelling of milk that's gone slightly wrong and sweat that belongs to someone else. You don't remember all their names. Sometimes you try to count them by noise. There's the cougher, the sniffer, the loud sleeper, the biter, the kicker who moves in dreams, the one who never seems to sleep at all. Sometimes they swap roles, as if they've formed a union and rotate duties. One gets to weep tonight. Another will whimper in the morning. A third will try to crawl into the fire, just to see what it's like. Their cries are not questions. They are declarations. I am cold. I am wet. I am hungry. I exist. And that is apparently enough to weep about. You've grown used to it. The background noise of childhood as it drags itself through mud and fever toward something older. Once you thought children were soft things, fragile and light. Now you know better. They are stubborn, sharp-edged creatures, with bones that bruise easily and lungs that never tire. They are loud in a world that insists on being quiet. They kick against silence like it's a door that might eventually open. The youngest cries now. The kind of cry that starts low in the chest and folds into itself like a question with no answer. You shift beneath the blanket, the weight of old wool pressing into your knees, your back, your neck. You listen. You wait. You don't get up. Not yet. You count the breaths between the sobs. Sometimes they stop on their own, not because they're comforted, but because the child has run out of air, or hope, or voice. You know the difference by now. You've lived long enough with the sound to know when it ends naturally and when it ends because something else has taken hold, fever or fatigue, or the heavy arm of a sleep that doesn't always wake. Another shift beside you, the adult shape, the one who also hears it. You can feel the hesitation, the calculation. Is it their turn? Is it yours? Is it worth disturbing the small patch of warmth you've both managed to build with your bodies? You rise first, this time, not because of love, because of math. Because if you do it now, they'll owe you one tomorrow. And favors are more valuable than sleep. The floor is cold beneath your feet, even through the cloth wrapped tight. Every board is a question. Every creak is a reminder. You step over the pile of rags that marks where the middle one sleeps. You avoid the slop bucket. You reach the cradle, or what passes for one, a wooden trough that used to hold turnips, now lined with old tunics that smell faintly of mold and wool fat. The child is there, curled like a small, furious animal, fists balled, face sticky with dried tears, and something else. Milk, perhaps, or just time. They are not sick, not this time. Only awake. Only uncomfortable in a world that refuses to rearrange itself around their misery. You lift them gently. Their body is light, almost alarmingly so, like holding a bundle of kindling. You know they've eaten. You know they've been changed. What they want now cannot be named. Only held. Only endured. You sit with them near the hearth, though there is no fire, only the memory of one. You rock them, not in a rhythm, but in slow, aching sways that feel more like surrender than comfort. Back, forth, a breath, a beat. The rat beneath the floor joins in with a faint scuffle, as if it too has a child that won't settle. There are other children in the village. They cry too. Sometimes at night you can hear them echoing from other houses, muffled by walls and hay and distance, but still unmistakable. A chorus of discomfort, rising like steam. Mothers hum songs they no longer believe in. Fathers pretend to sleep. Children are loud, yes, but it's not the noise that exhausts you. It's the need, the constant, impossible need, to be held, fed, rocked, soothed, watched. Always watched. Always almost falling into fire, into mud, into death. They know nothing, and yet somehow they undo everything. You wonder if you were like this once, a wet thing, crying in someone else's arms, disrupting their one good night's rest for the month. You think probably yes. The cycle spins like a wheel, and no one ever gets off. The child in your arms has gone quiet, not asleep, but thinking, plotting perhaps. You feel their breath warm against your chest, small and quick like a rabbit. Their hand clutches at your tunic, then relaxes. They are, for the moment, still. You do not return to bed. You sit, and you wait. The silence is so soft now, you almost forget the noise that came before. But in the other corner, another child stirs. A cough, a whimper, the sound of straw shifting under restless limbs. You don't turn your head. You already know. There's never only one. The goat bleats, distantly, offended by something it refuses to explain. The neighbor coughs again, longer this time. The floor creaks with footsteps that aren't yours, but might be imagined. The wind leans into the wall like an unwanted guest. The child in your arms snuffles once more but doesn't wake. For now, you close your eyes, not to sleep, only to rest them, only for a moment, just until the next cry. There are nights when you do not remember falling asleep, not because sleep came gently, but because it snuck up behind you while you were still trying to decide whether to stretch your legs or scratch that one spot that always itches once you're warm. You don't remember the last thing you thought. Maybe it was a prayer. Maybe it was a list of chores you'd rather not face. Maybe it was nothing at all. Just the blur of exhaustion folding over your bones like damp wool. And then, something shifts. Not a noise loud enough to startle. Not a jolt. Only the subtle dislocation of being no longer in the room, and yet not quite away from it. You are still lying in the bed, or what passes for it. Straw that pokes, linen that scratches, breath rising from a body that is still sore from yesterday. But something is different. A layer has pulled loose. A veil has thinned. And now you are floating. Not above, not outside, but deeper into something that is part memory, part fever, part hunger, and part smoke. Dreams are not clean things. They do not glide in silk robes or speak in riddles that make sense in the morning. They are messy, pungent things, with fingers made of smell and skin made of mud. They arrive on smoke. Not the clear smoke of a candle just snuffed, but the heavy, greasy kind that clings to old wood and newer wounds. The kind that curls around your nose and fills your mouth and sinks into your hair like a story you were never told, but always knew. In this dream, you are somewhere familiar, but not quite right. The hearth is still there, your hearth, but the fire dances too tall, too blue. The benches look warped. The rafters droop like eyebrows heavy with secrets. The sour scent of old bread fills the air. That thick, musty tang of flour and thyme, and the mold that always appears, no matter how well you try to hide it. Someone has baked recently, or maybe not. In dreams, freshness and decay sleep in the same bed. Your hands are moving. You are kneading something, slowly, methodically. Not dough, but something colder, something softer. Clay, ash, flesh? You do not know. You press it down and it yields. You shape it and it crumbles. And all the while that scent of sour bread rises like steam, warm and unwelcome. In the dream, the walls are too close, then too far, then gone entirely. You are standing in the forest now, barefoot on moss that feels like damp wool, surrounded by trees that lean in to listen. You can hear the bell from the chapel, not ringing, not yet, but humming softly like it knows your name and does not approve. A child is crying again. Or is it the goat? Or is it you? You turn, and the forest is the cottage again, but not your cottage, someone else's, a better one, a worse one. You can't tell. There is no floor, only dirt. The fire crackles too loudly. The air smells of smoke again, this time tinged with something sharper. Burned onions, wet leather, a trace of sickness, too faint to name but too strong to ignore. And behind it all, the unshakable presence of old bread, cracked and curling at the edges, its crust like old bark. You know you are dreaming, but that doesn't help. Knowing only makes the dream heavier, like trying to run with your boots full of water. Every movement echoes. Every glance takes effort. Every breath tastes like winter. A voice calls your name, not a real one, not someone you can place, but the kind of voice that appears in dreams, woven together from memory and worry. It says your name like it's the punchline to a joke no one ever laughed at. You do not answer. You've learned by now that answering only brings more voices. You walk, or try to. The floor keeps changing, dirt to stone to water to nothing. Your feet forget how to trust what they're standing on. The world spins slowly, like a grindstone turned by a tired hand. You pass a doorway that has no door, then a window with no wall. You step over a sleeping dog, only to find it breathing beneath the floorboards the next moment. You see a face in the soot on the wall, then again in the butter dish, then again in your own palms. Each time, it looks a little more like someone you might have known. The smell of smoke is everywhere now, in your sleeves, in your mouth, in your teeth. You try to swallow, but your throat is filled with the taste of ashes. Not firewood ashes, but the kind from burnt porridge, from a candle dropped into dirty straw, from the memory of something that used to be warm and now isn't. You are cold, but not entirely. Parts of you are too warm. Your forehead, your hands, the backs of your knees. Fever seeps in sideways in dreams, not with heat, but with weight. You feel heavy, full of wool and fog and longing. Longing for what? You can't say. Perhaps just to sleep again, properly this time, without this noise, this smell, this ache of imagined movement. Someone brushes past you. You feel them but see nothing. A sibling, maybe. A neighbor. A shade of someone long gone. They do not speak. They only exhale. And their breath smells like sour bread, just like everything else. The dream begins to curl. Not end. Dreams never end. But coil in on itself like an old rope, unraveling just as it knots. You feel the familiar pull of waking, not urgent, not loud, just insistent. A nudge at the edge of your thoughts, a memory of the cold place your real body occupies. You are lying down again, though you do not remember falling. The bed is as it always is, straw and slats, creaking and comfortless. Someone beside you mutters in their sleep. Someone behind the wall coughs. The rat beneath the floor has found something soft to chew. The goat stirs once and then goes still again, knowing more than you do, as always. The fire has not been stoked. The coals have not moved. But the room smells faintly of smoke anyway. And somewhere, in the dark, there is a crust of bread on the table, curled at the edges, slightly sour, waiting to be eaten or forgotten, just like you. You turn your face to the wall, not because it's warmer, because it's quieter. The air tastes of everything you've dreamed, soot, bread, breath, time. And in that stillness, just before the cough returns, just before the child stirs, just before the goat sighs in judgment, you drift again, not quite asleep, not quite awake. Somewhere between the smoke and the bread, between the dream and the waiting, between this moment and the next. There is a moment between the dream and the dawn when you forget what warmth ever felt like. Not because it is gone, but because the memory itself begins to fray, thread by thread, until all you remember is the weight of blankets that never do enough, the breath that clouds the air even in the dark, and the cold that no longer bites so much as it breathes beside you, slow and steady. It has been here too long to be an enemy. Enemies try to win. The cold doesn't bother. It seeps. It waits. It settles in the folds of your clothes and the bends of your joints and the hollows between ribs where breath is supposed to live. You pull your knees in closer, not out of strategy, but instinct. A crooked curl that might hold a trace of yesterday's heat. You do not expect comfort, only less discomfort than the alternative. The straw beneath you is stiff in some places, flat in others, and in one particularly unhelpful spot, damp. You do not ask why. Dampness needs no cause. It simply arrives, like gossip or mold or bad luck. It clings to your hip through the linen shift you've worn too many nights in a row. You think of turning over, but the energy it would take to roll is more than the benefit of a drier side. So you stay. The blanket atop you, if you can call it that, has never been warm so much as not cold. Scratchy wool, once brown, now some shade between soot and fatigue. It holds the scent of smoke and sweat and animal, and when it shifts, it sighs like an old man too tired to argue. You are under it entirely now, even your face, even your breath, though it makes the air damp and hot and sour beneath the fabric. It's better than the alternative. The alternative is frost, kissing your cheeks without consent. Beside you, a sibling stirs, not with grace, but with the flailing sleep of someone who has forgotten they share a space with others. An elbow finds your side. You grunt, then feel bad for making a noise. The room is supposed to be still. The room is never still. A cough begins somewhere. Not yours, not nearby, but close enough that the sound comes through the wall like a whispered curse. Someone's lungs are holding on to winter like it owes them something. It rattles again, then fades, unfinished. A pause, a silence. A quiet snore begins where the cough left off. You try not to shiver, not because it helps. It doesn't. But because shivering makes noise. And noise reminds you you're alive. And being alive in this moment means knowing, truly knowing, that the cold will never leave. Not fully. Not forever. Instead, it learns your shape. It tucks itself into the arch of your foot, the bend of your neck, the breath beneath your blanket. It becomes part of the way your muscles tense, the way your hands ball into fists in your sleep, the way your spine curves like a question no one answers. It is not a guest anymore. It is the partner who never moved out. You remember warmth, vaguely, not fire exactly. Fires are for daytime, for when people are watching. Night fire is unreliable, a sputtering ember, a tired log, a dream of heat more than the thing itself. But you remember other kinds of warmth. A bowl of stew, maybe. A cat once, long ago, before it chose someone else's barn. The sun on your back during summer field work. Back when you still thought sun was something you could bank for later. You think of the sun now, not with hope, with longing. The way you might think of someone you once kissed and never saw again. It was never yours, not really. But it brushed against you once, and that's enough to miss it. Your toes are trying to forget themselves. First they sting, then they burn, then they vanish. Somewhere, beneath the crusted soles of your socks, they're still there. Probably. You haven't looked in days. There's no point. What would you do if one had gone blue? Make a poultice? Sing to it? Sigh and hope the others follow soon so at least they'd match? The goat, the one with the eyes that know too much, is not in the house tonight. You almost miss her. Her warmth, her smell, her judgment. You wonder where she is. Whether she's cold, too. You doubt it. She has her own secrets. Goat secrets. Probably warm ones. A creak above you. Not loud, but not ignorable. The roof complaining. A draft, perhaps. A shifting beam. The weight of the world settling in just a little further. The cold slips in with it, not with speed, but with certainty. A single current of air trails down from somewhere near your shoulder. It touches you like a finger. You do not move. Movement invites more. Someone beside you pulls the blanket tighter. That helps, a little. Their shoulder presses into yours. That helps more. Body heat is not generous, but it is shareable. In the dark, bodies are not people. They are furnaces, weak ones, but better than none. You think of the day ahead, but not in detail. That would be cruel. Just enough to know it will come, and with it, a reason to leave the bed. The fire will need coaxing. The pot will need tending. The frost on the inside of the door will need breaking before it lets anyone pass. You do not dread it. You do not look forward to it. You merely know it. And that is enough. The blanket shifts again. Someone sighs in their sleep. Not peacefully. Just the kind of sigh that says, still here. You feel that. You match it. A breath in, a breath out. The blanket stirs. The cold shifts. A rat beneath the floor scratches once, then quiets. Maybe even he's tired of the chill. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, but to pretend. To imagine the dark is warmer when you don't look at it. Your breath fogs beneath the wool. It makes your eyelashes damp. You press your face into the space between arm and blanket. It smells like you, like wood smoke and wool fat and waiting. It is not pleasant, but it is yours. Outside, the wind is doing something. You don't know what. You don't care. The wind always does something, and it's rarely helpful. If it brings snow, you will deal with it. If it brings nothing, it will still howl about it. You press your feet against someone else's ankles. They groan. You stay anyway. Cold is rude. Warmth is ruder. Eventually, Your bones stop protesting, not because they are warm, but because they are tired of complaining. They settle into the chill the way a person settles into a debt, with resignation and a sort of practiced stillness. You are not asleep, but you are not fully awake either. You are somewhere between frost and breath, between discomfort and the memory of something softer. The cold is still here. It always will be. But now it is familiar. Now it is close. Now it holds you like something it intends to keep. You exhale slowly, letting the steam rise into the narrow space beneath the wool. It curls like a ghost, like a prayer, like a promise you never made, but are expected to keep. The wind hushes. The floor stills. The coughs go quiet for a while. And in that muffled hush between shiver and stillness, the cold curls beside you, not gone, just resting, just waiting, just learning the shape of your sleep. The cold has curled into your joints like a cat without manners, but it is not what wakes you. You're not even sure you were asleep, just lying still somewhere between rest and regret, like a blanket folded wrong. The night has fallen properly now. It is the deep kind, the type that does not offer comfort or fear, just the long hush of time holding its breath. There's nothing to reach for, nothing left to do. The world has narrowed to a soft, wool-wrapped waiting. The day has ended. You do not remember how, only that it did. That somewhere between the smoky stew and the muttered chores and the brittle silence around the hearth, light gave up and wandered off, and no one chased it. No one ever does. You merely notice its absence by how your shoulders hunch without being told, how your feet find their way toward the dark, familiar beds of flattened straw and sour wool without ceremony. There is no ritual, no pause to say, "We have survived." That would be presumptuous. It would be prideful. All you do is lie down, as low as you can, as still as you're able, as if pressing yourself into the floor will make the night pass faster. You're not alone. You never are. Not in the longhouse, not in the cold, not in your thoughts. The presence beside you breathes too loud. Another grinds their teeth. One coughs in that dragging way, the sound of lungs that remember summers you never had. The floor groans beneath bodies turning in search of less discomfort. The fire at the center of it all has slouched into a sighing ember, the kind that glows but does not help. A reminder more than a remedy. Your hands are cracked, and your fingernails are rimmed with the soil of somewhere you don't want to return to tomorrow, but must. Your knees throb. Your shoulders ache from lifting things that never grow lighter. There is a blister you didn't have this morning and a splinter you do not remember receiving. You know where they came from. They came from the day. The same place every injury comes from. Not battle, not accident, just time moving with its elbows out. The blanket barely covers you, and the shape it makes is too short, too thin, too rough. It smells of unwashed bodies, goat dander, and last week's rain. You share it anyway. There's no alternative. And the warmth, though stingy, is real enough to make the difference between sleep and shivering. You inhale through your nose. It smells like wool and wood smoke and the faint bitterness of something burnt into the stew pot. Beneath it all, the scent of earth lingers. Floor packed tight with mud and straw, and whatever walked in on someone's shoes. You've stopped noticing it unless you try. And you only try when you're this tired. Your mind drifts in slow loops, not thoughts exactly, more like remembered sensations, rubbed smooth by repetition. The thud of wood on wood, the slosh of a bucket half full, the low complaint of your spine as you stood too long, bent too far, carried too much. None of it matters now. It just follows you, like smoke in hair, like the sound of your own name whispered from the end of a field. A creak from the loft above. Someone turns over and the board joins in with a groan of its own. Beneath the floor, the rat resumes its nighttime patrol, claws clicking softly, a sound that now blends so fully with the breathing and snoring and muttering that it becomes part of the lullaby. You try not to listen to the silence between sounds. That's where the unease waits. Not fear, just that old, hollow question. Will tomorrow be better? You don't need to ask. You already know. It will not be better, but it will come. You are too tired to dread it, too tired to imagine it. Tomorrow is already forming like a blister under the skin of tonight. You do not try to stop it. You only try to outlast it, one breath at a time. There was a time when you believed days were for doing and nights were for resting. That was before you understood that rest is just the long, uncomfortable pause between labors. That breath is something you hold while working and release when you remember. That sleep is less about dreaming and more about collapsing. You shift. Your hip finds a sharper place in the straw. You shift again. A murmur behind you. Someone else adjusts, unwillingly pulled into your movements like seaweed tugged by your tide. You feel guilty. You feel cold. You feel like an animal pretending to be a person, or maybe the other way around. You press your hands together beneath your chin, fingers touching like a prayer you don't say. Your skin is dry. Your knuckles are rough. There are small cuts, familiar now, like old neighbors. One pulse beats faintly in your wrist, reminding you, yes, still here. A dog barks somewhere outside, distant, unconcerned. Then another, then quiet. Not everything out there wants to come in. Not everything out there would survive if it did. Your breath slows. The fire gives one soft pop. The blanket lifts and falls with the rhythm of breathing not your own. You are not comfortable. You are not at peace. But you are still breathing. And in this world, that is something. Not everything, but something. The wind pushes against the wall once. Not hard. Not like it wants in. More like it wants to be remembered. A single gust. A brush of air that sneaks through a gap in the boards, traces the rim of your cheek, and moves on. Cold. Thoughtless. Gone. You hear the goat shifting outside the door, muttering in a way that sounds like disapproval. She'll need to be milked come morning. She doesn't care if you slept. She doesn't care if you dreamed. You don't remember if you did. Dream, that is. You never really know where the line is between what happened and what you imagined in the smoke-stained dark. Maybe you dreamed of bread, or sun, or walking through a market with clean hands and no weight in your back. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just lay here, the way you are now, listening to the world be what it always is. Indifferent, unfinished, full of rustling and breath. Your ribs lift, then settle. The quiet grows heavier, not because the sounds have gone, but because you've fallen more deeply beneath them. The same way you fall into old straw, into the routine ache of a day too long, into the shape your body makes when it gives up trying to be upright. There will be another day. There always is. You will rise. You will ache. You will carry. You will wait. You will eat too little, speak too softly, sleep too briefly. You will pretend this is normal, because it is, but not yet. Now you lie still, not because you choose to, but because there is nothing else. You do not smile. You do not frown. You exist. And that is the quietest form of defiance the cold allows. A murmur from the loft, a sigh beside you. The rat, finally, silent. And somewhere beyond all of it, the sound of your breath, soft, regular, unfinished. And still, despite it all, you end the day breathing. The straw shifts, the last ember sighs. The dark leans in, not cruelly, but close. And everything fades, like the breath of someone who no longer needs to speak.